Okay, hello. Here we are.
Paul.
Hello. Hello, welcome.
I just want to let you know your mic is working just fine. You are audible and you are ready to go.
Okay, great. Thank you. I got some notes about items of the week to just possibly discuss, but if anyone has any questions, they can hop up.
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, this is kind of like a funny type of question. Wait, are you aware of like what meme coins are? Like the little two crypto coins?
I didn't quite, you cut out a little bit. Did you say, am I aware of what meme coins are?
Yeah, I said, are you aware of what meme coins are? Like the little joke.
Yeah, it's like a coin that's like only a meme, basically, but it's for fun. And I mean, I would think of that as mostly like Dogecoin or something like that.
Yeah.
What is it?
Like Dogecoin.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's I'm kind of involved in the meme coin space, so I kind of, like to do some stuff with that. So it's very nice to see. I know you've been in the space, and I've been following up with your content and everything with Truthcoin, and yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Wait,
okay.
Are you aware of the Solana blockchain? Sorry, I'll make this quick. Like Solana.
Yeah, no, there's already someone has already done this eCash Solana thing, and I posted about how we'll we'll treat the creator fees as if someone is buying the token, the real cash. So that's like a neat way of making it somewhat real. So instead of being merely a meme, it will also have some trade-in value. And I explained that in the post. So there you go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's kind of cool to see something like that. I think it would be even cooler if it was you to like make your own like type meme coin. I don't know, adopting a meme coin from someone else who made it, even though you get the creator fees when it's traded, is cool. But coming from you, I think it would be even a better experience. So
yeah, I think the thing is, we could make it so that anyone who does anything with the trader fees, because again, I was just saying we'll just interpret that as buying the token, but I don't want it to get too crazy. Okay, let me.
What? Sorry, you cut off.
I said I don't want it to get too crazy, like in terms of like too much to explain and have people cross-referencing like 100 spreadsheets and stuff.
Oh, okay. Wait, what if you make a meme coin live on Spaces? Wouldn't that be cool?
No, it would not.
Oh, you don't think so? Sorry about that.
I do not.
Okay.
Okay, let me give you my, I got like some notes of the week. So maybe these will, if people want to ask about these or anything else, then let me know. So first on my note of the week is Rusty Russell is leaving Lightning, even though he was basically like the smartest. He was one of the super smart, most experienced Bitcoin developers. He headed up Blockstream's C Lightning project, which is like this super important core infrastructure Lightning like backend project. And he's also like very polite. And he was part of during the block size war, he was one of the few people that actually said like reasonable things and tried to rein in the rudeness and kind of chaos of the whole thing. And so then you had like other people like Samson Mao who were sort of capitalizing on it, but he was trying to rein it in. And so he's like basically one of the top people in in terms of integrity, knowledge, and experience. He's like one of the top people in the whole industry. And he's now apparently quitting Lightning and quitting Bitcoin, going back to work on Linux, which is what he was doing before. And so that just speaks to the ongoing death of Lightning, that it's like there's nowhere to go with Lightning. You can't do anything about that. And so you could say like, how would we compare that to like the endless hype that comes from like many Bitcoiners, and you have like Michael Saylor saying, "Oh, everyone's going to be rich," and then you have to compare that to all the Lightning people like Fiat Joff and myself, who were telling you the whole time that this Lightning thing is not going to pan for years. We're talking about that. So that's one item of the week. Also, item number 2 on the list, we actually finished raising the $5 million round. So it was mostly closed before we publicly announced, but which was before the Las Vegas conference in April. But it was mostly closed then, but it has since filled up, and it's now finished. So that does that's very interesting. That obviously on one hand we have a lot of haters, which is fine, but it does prove that there's a large appetite for this project to some extent. And so there's a lot of external validation. So I was going to announce that tomorrow morning via tweet, but I guess if you showed up here, then you heard it first.
Wait, Paul.
Yes.
I have a question. Do you think I could maybe get a follow back? I just want to keep up with you. Maybe we could talk in DMs.
Okay, sure. I will follow you. Okay, great. And we also have this bug bounty, which is $100,000. It's been going for about a week and a little or so. Maybe I lost track of time, but I don't know. It's been going for a little while, and it's 5 rounds with $20,000 each round. It will probably increase that because it's been going very well. And the idea is if you report bugs, and whoever finds the most wins, basically, although there are different categories of bug. And so if you find more severe bugs, makes it way more likely that you'll win. And so people have been sending in bugs, which is very good. And I could explain more about that, but you can read about it on the announcement page. So if you go to either eCash.com or if you go to drivechain.info and find the article section, it's up there both times, and you can see kind of how it works. And so that's been great. I also have on my list, Michael Saylor is selling. Zach Vole has a hilarious meme. It's a pretty good meme maker. And he was like, oh, I don't know exactly. I can't do the exact joke, but it was something like, you've bought every local top, and now you're down only to break even for like 7 years, and then you said you would never sell, and now you're selling. And see, everyone can go to saylortracker.com, because we have to break the spell that Michael Saylor has any idea what he's talking about, which he mostly does not. And you go to saylortracker.com, and you'll see that he's mostly new, and he mostly overpaid, and he's down something like 10%, and he has lost a huge amount of money by getting involved with BTC, and he sold $400 million worth of MicroStrategy stock for cash. Although I heard that he is sold the 400 million in cash so that he could buy Bitcoin personally. And then I was thinking, oh, well, maybe he does understand Bitcoin after all. You know what I mean? He's scamming the MSTR people. He's walking away with the real Bitcoin, he's walking away with real Bitcoin and with real millions of dollars. And he's just giving people the worthless MSTR stock. So I was like, well, maybe he does understand how Bitcoin works. He understands how to scam you so that he can get more Bitcoin for himself. I thought, oh, that's funny. Okay. I have a note here about this Solana token. We already talked about it. There's a page, ecash.com/sol-token. So it will answer all of your Solana questions. And it's only the top 5 can redeem. That's to minimize the amount of headache. And it doesn't matter if you aren't in the top 5. You can shop around, sell to them. So the value, it's a clever thing where the value gets pumped into the token if it's the case that more education about eCash will increase the value of eCash, which I think is true. So Okay, I have one other thing on my list, but yeah, feel free to come up and ask about the August hard fork. If you have any questions or complaints, I posted the thread of like, oh, we had all these, when we announced it, of course, there were some people who complain, and of course they had like the dumbest complaints in the whole universe, but they were like, but of course, then they're not going to come here to talk on the Twitter space. But we can at least kind of say, we can at least throw it out there and give them an offer to show up. And yeah, maybe they can explain why it's such a bad idea in person. But we know that they won't. But the point is, that's kind of the point, is that they won't show up. And I have some other notes on the week. So if we can just keep doing those. But if it's more important that if anyone has any questions about the hard fork or anything else.
Hey, Paul, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Just want to ask you quickly about the website you just mentioned for the meme coin. So on there, you have a thing saying that the top 5 holders can swap up to 5 times each. Could you maybe just explain what the swapping 5 times each means? And is there some kind of game theory element to that, or what's the point in the 5 times each part? Thanks.
Yeah, that limits it to just 25 total interactions between me and the people, or whoever in the people, so that they can then, because otherwise it would be too annoying to deal with it all.
Right. So, but why wouldn't everyone just swap all the tokens all at once?
No, the ideal thing for everyone is to have one guy buy up all of at the end, like in August 30th or whatever, one guy buy up all of the meme token and swap it one time, because that minimizes the total headache for everyone. So hopefully that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But trust me, it's a really, really, really good idea. And if you just think about it.
Right, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. You were cutting out a bit for me. I don't know for everyone else if they could hear you, but I only caught a couple words. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying it's a really, really good idea. And if you just think about it really hard, then maybe it will make more sense, because it's great. It's the perfect thing for each person involved. So I don't know how much more time I want to waste talking about it, because it's honestly not that important. So I also had on my list about, okay, the BSV people show up in here sometimes, which is great. It's very interesting. And 2 times ago, I think, we had the conversation with the guy who wouldn't stop talking about the free riding, the SPV. And I was thinking, well, what's a better way of maybe explaining it to that person, which is that the free riding is very important, because you have to be aware of how your behavior affects other people. So I have this example of, if you whistle, some people find it really annoying, but other people really like it. Like some people really, really, really like it, and maybe you can quit your job, whatever you normally do, and you can get a job as a performer and make more money, have an easier, better life. That would be like, oh, you didn't realize that what you were doing was helping other people, but then you did, and you cash in on it. And then the same way is, you might think, oh, if people are annoyed by this whistling, you might think, well, hey, maybe over time people stop inviting you to the Friday night poker game or whatever. So that's why it's really important for people to keep in mind, like, so the SPV is this relationship where you are free riding off of someone else's full node, and it has to work harder and harder to process each transaction, store it forever, and serve it back to everyone. And so you just have to be aware of the fact that they, if they didn't do that, you would be done for. And so then, especially when people try to push the envelope and say, well, we're just going to put everything on chain. So that's all the more reason. Okay, so Vlad, what do you think? Or if anyone has a question or a comment, can pop up.
I think it's awesome that Wayne is here because he can build Wayne chain as a Drivechain.
Yeah, Wayne chain was in 2016, a satirical and or 100% real project that had time traveling transactions, and it had like a guitar solo. I think it had a lot going for it. That's ancient history, though. Oh, Wayne has come up, or Vlad brought him up, maybe.
Yeah, I
Hey
invited
guys,
Wayne.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. I just popped in the room to see what y'all were talking about, but I think it's great that you're talking about Wayne Chain. It is still the world's fastest and most secure blockchain technology with time traveling transactions, unlimited storage, zero block size or block time, ultimate unlimited block size. Everybody should go to waynechain.com and check it out. Actually, quick funny story about that. I actually got not really criticism, but questioning from my investors at the time in 2016, like, why did you do this? And they're like, we just don't get it. And I said, I did it because it was funny. And I wanted to do something over the weekend to sort of point out that we were selling at the time something that was practical and usable, and everybody else was selling, vaporware and visions of things that were pretty much useless. And over the years, they kind of came around, and they actually have a little they had a Wayne Chain website homepage printout framed up on the wall at Blockchain Capital's offices at one point, which I thought was kind of neat.
That's too bad that they don't understand the satire, because that was kind of like we were living through a time when people were competing on who can have the fastest block time and who can have the largest block sizes, and all that was being treated as though it had no cost, and that wasn't true. And that was exactly the whole point of the joke, is that, okay, well, here's this thing with whatever, zero block time.
Yeah, they got it after a little while. I mean, I did it simultaneously at the time that we announced our $1 million round of fundraising. And so they were like, why did you're trying to sell to enterprise customers. Why did you announce this thing at the same time that you're announcing your fundraising? It kind of undermines your credibility. And I said, I disagree. I think it enhances our credibility because the people who would use our stuff understand why this is funny. And I was a little nervous, a little bit. Like, maybe these guys are right, but on balance, by far, Wayne Chain had I can't tell you how many people contacted me, and just or if I was in meetings with like folks over at IBM or other places where people were like, Wayne Chain is hilarious. Thank you for doing something like that. So memes work. Memes are a good sales tool.
And it was very obviously like a satire from like the announcement, the music, and everything. It was like it's disappointing, but it makes perfect sense that people are kind of like, maybe just thinking, oh yeah, what's the point of this? But I mean, come on, people.
Well, now you have, so back then, 2016, there was no AI or whatever. And I had, in a previous lifetime, I had run a digital agency for a long time. And so I wrote that radio commercial and produced it. And I had one of the voice actors that I work with previously do the voiceover for the commercial. So it was actually kind of a big deal not a big deal. It was a difficult task at that time to do. But nowadays, you could make Drivechain commercials in 30 minutes with ChatGPT, and it would probably be, a better quality than, what I had produced back then. So you're in the era of meme marketing. I can't wait to see what you guys put out.
Yeah, it'll all just be, it'll all be Wayne chain derived. No, I'm just kidding. We actually have good. We have insane Daniel Krawitz videos now, so that's like that's as
Wait,
crazy as it gets.
Is he making new videos?
Yeah.
Really?
No, you gotta go to the eCash.com, the YouTube page. There's two eCash videos. Yeah, they're wild. The first one's really, really good. He's shared some ideas with me too, and they're crazy, like some of the later ones that are coming up. But the first one's really good. Second one's pretty good too. Second one has me as like Mario.
What's interesting to me is that people who came into Bitcoin later, when I say later, I mean like after 2015, they kind of forget how weird Bitcoin was, or were never really exposed to it because they were kind of like on the outside looking in at during that time period. And right now we're in this weird, orange tie suit coin era where, in my humble opinion, what happens with Bitcoin has more to do with what happens in Washington, D.C. than market forces at this particular point in time, just because we're at this crossroads with the Clarity Act and all that. But it would be interesting if during this bear market, if there's a washout of some of these Bitcoin treasury companies and some of the other stuff that's out there, and we kind of go back to that, there's like a weird sector, I guess, at this point. It couldn't be the whole thing because Bitcoin's so much bigger now, but a weird sector where guys like Daniel Krawitz and others start coming out of the woodwork and just doing weird Bitcoin stuff.
It's a very, very good question of like, to what extent should it remain punk, or should it not, or what is going on? It's like, this is different than 2016. Is it the opposite, or is it actually the same? Like, well, I think in 2016 you had a lot of stuff that was definitely never going to pan out, like the blockchain without Bitcoin stuff that was kind of doomed. So that's not the same as the treasury companies, but I don't know. It is a very interesting time. I'm not sure what to make of it myself. Guys, if anyone has a question or comment, then feel free to hop up.
I just want to say that this week there's going to be the Bitcoin Film Fest in Warsaw, and I may or may not be involved in putting up a poster that promotes the hard fork that's coming in August for eCash, and it's hilarious. It's like a slasher film. If you're going to that event or you know someone who's going, ask them to check it out. It's also next doors for MoneroCon, so the Monero guys are gonna walk in for some movies maybe, and they're gonna see that on the way to the theater, and it's pretty cool. I think that there's some untapped meme potential here.
So, Paul, I haven't really been keeping up. What's the latest thing going on with eCash?
Well, I think you just missed. I did like a recap, but the 5 million funding round is closed. So that's pretty good. And we're doing this bug bounty to hammer all the bugs out before launch. So we're doing a cool bug contest. I already mentioned both things, so I'd hate to re-mention them. But
thank you for recapping it for me. Thank you.
And yeah, I think the bug bounty thing is cool. People are sending in lots of good bugs, and the idea is 3 months from now there shouldn't be any, and it prioritizes people who find any severe bugs, so it should be scanning for those. So that should be nice. We got Raphael up here also.
Yeah. Just one last question about this? What does the launch look like? Like, what happens during the launch, immediately after? I mean, I know you don't know, but what's a good guess about what are the major things that are going to be happening around that?
Well, yeah, the launch would be the fork split off date, and we'll just basically we'll take the BTC blockchain and lower the difficulty to a very, very low value. And so as a result, there'll be lots and lots of blocks found quickly afterward. But the difficulty will also adjust up very quickly. And there might be some chaos as a result. Like there'll probably be lots of blocks being found. There might be giant reorgs. This is only like on the first few days. But then and then one thing that may happen is the difficulty might adjust too high, and we might reach a situation where blocks take a really long time. We may have lined up some hash rate to rent if that happens, or the project maybe be a huge success and it'll just be really big, and so there won't be any problem with that. Or it'll be really small and it'll be easy to fix, or it'll be in some middle value where there might be some shenanigans with that to just get it off the ground. But once it reaches equilibrium, it will be its own blockchain, its own project. And we do plan on replaying the transactions from BTC into eCash. So there will be lots of transactions in the network that are on from both networks, really. And then everyone will be able to buy and sell as they wish, and they'll be able to use all the different L2s, which includes the 7 that we are shipping, and also any other ones that come up. I've heard that there may be some more built by other people.
Did you follow at all what Fred Krueger was doing with RPow recently? He
I didn't know recently. No.
I don't really follow that much either, but people send me messages. He blocked me on Twitter, so X or whatever. So, but people still send me messages now and then. I guess what he did was create a proof of work coin that was a tribute to Hal Finney, supposedly. And within a short period of time, there was tons and tons of bots that were mining this coin. And I think RPow stands for reusable proof of work, which Paul, I'm sure you're familiar with. But I think that what people were doing, based on what I saw, at least the screenshots that people were sending me, was like they created, I think they created derivative assets on like Solana of these units, and that's how they were trading for a while. Is that likely to happen with eCash?
No, it has already happened. In fact, people are coming up and asking about it already. So people will make even with or without you, they just make all these this stuff that has a similar name and is loosely affiliated. So what he did actually make a site. If you go to ecash.com/sol-token, we explain that we'll treat the creator fees as like a purchase. So as it trades, money just flows to the creator, which they can just designate as anyone. And so we said we'll just treat that as a purchase. And now that the $5 million round is closed, that's actually probably the cheapest way to even get. But that's the trader fees. That's not buying the actual. It's kind of convoluted, the whole thing. But yeah, that is it's kind of a weird thing from a liquidity point of view. It's a very interesting. But yeah, that definitely will happen. It's already happened, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's wildly different than things were years ago, where if you had a coin, you either had to beg or work with a team at an exchange like Cryptsy or something like that for them to be able to carry and sell the coin. Now there's all these basically automated vending machines that can pop up everywhere, which is kind of, I don't know, liberating in a certain way, because you don't have to worry about a central operator orchestrating that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you were your project was kind of beholden to whatever way the wind blew with those small number of exchanges and other folks that were out there that would open up a market for the token.
Yeah, not only that, all the exchanges used to go back in our day, Wayne and I's day, the exchanges would just go straight up, go bankrupt or steal everyone's money or get hacked like all the time. It's funny that now all of these projects that all use like, this pump.fun and stuff, they all use automated market makers too, which was my idea from Truthcoin from 2012 to bring that over to the blockchain world. And then Vitalik found out about it and it escaped containment from the Robin Hansen universe and it went into the Ethereum world. So that's another wild thing. Okay, we got Raphael. He's also here. Hello.
Hey, what's
Welcome.
up, guys? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Awesome. So I think everyone is already thinking about what kind of drive chains they would like to see on eCash, and I just want to put this out into the universe. I would like to see Octra as a drive chain on eCash. Thank you.
Yeah, but what is that though? I don't know anything that much about that.
They have not launched their mainnet yet. They already had an auction on Uniswap for their coin, and it's a full homomorphic encryption smart contract blockchain. So it's private by default.
So it's kind of like a private Ethereum or something?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so I'm just putting it out there. Anyone interested in maybe collaborating with the eCash people to get a hold of Paul Storks and Layer 2 Labs, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't want to be in the business of gatekeeping the L2s. So we want anyone who wants to build the L2 can. This will include, some of them will do really, really well and others will probably not do well. But that's a very important part of innovation.
So Octra has its own, it's not SHA-256, but let's say that they wanted to merge mine SHA-256 with eCash. How could they? Could they? And
Well, we had this, you might remember, we had this project called ETH Side in 2023, which was basically Ethereum Geth, but just modified so that instead of having block rewards, it did BIP300 deposits and withdrawals. And instead of having the Ethereum proof of stake, it just had blind merge mining. So now I don't know if other people will be able to emulate that. We had one guy do it in like one weekend. So he obviously didn't think it was that hard. And there are videos and stuff, people could find this on YouTube. So of course it's possible in principle and probably it's been done in practice to some extent. But will anyone find, obviously if they built it from scratch, I think it wouldn't be that hard for them to change it from, proof of work or proof of stake to being blind merge mined with eCash. Remember, eCash is just basically Bitcoin Core. The L1 is like exactly the same. So the L1 is the same as Bitcoin Core. And then the deposits withdrawals is not, it's not the hardest thing, I don't think. So we'll have to figure out, maybe we'll do something else. We'll do some kind of, my thinking is that people always want to see the SDK or the whatever, like the tutorial or something, which is fine. And I kind of would rather focus on building with Layer 2 Labs. I'd rather focus on like actually just building like 7 good examples, and then you can kind of look at one that's close to what you want to do and then fork it and modify it. Then you have an actual working project that you can fork. I don't know. That seems better to me.
Hey, Paul, is there still a 256 drivetrain constraint?
Well, okay, there was never really a true constraint because if 51% wanted to add another drive chain, then they can just add like BIP300B. You have like BIP300A, BIP300B, and then you could have another 256, excuse me. So, and then you could also have drive chains of the drive chains themselves. So in practice, there's really no limit. But like in the protocol for BIP300, there's still the 256 limit. The true limit
So
is
if
the
I'm
attention, like everyone's attention. Like, can everyone take responsibility for all these and want?
but in terms of the drive chain, the 256 constraint, that's sort of the base level constraint. I'll just make up my own term for it. How is that enforced? Like if the 257th person wanted to create a drive chain, what would they have to do? And what would stop them from doing it if the 256 slots had already been filled up?
That's one of the things, I guess, just to interject, I guess, that I was going to also ask a question about, which is about like the messaging. It's a message type in the BIP300 spec that they talk about. So I don't know if you could expand on that a little bit, Paul.
Yeah, the L1, it doesn't know what is happening on the L2s. So like Crazy Daniel Krawitz has a funny video coming out where he's got this joke about this, which is it's funny about like you don't know what happened in Vietnam, and it's like Rambo getting tortured, and it's like, and you don't want to know, and it's kind of like you gotta wait till you see the video. It's gonna be funny, but so basically on L1 they don't see what happens on the L2, but they do know they have the L2s each have a number because the deposits that go into drive chain number 3 are different from the deposits that go to drive chain number 8 or something. So L1 is aware of it, has like 256 slots basically, and 256 accounts, kind of, one per sidechain. And so a lot of stuff will happen like blind merge mining stuff or the withdrawals or the deposits. And it will refer to this number, and the number is just a 1 byte integer. So after you hit 200, you have to hit whatever, 1111111, you run out of space, and you will be referring to someone that already exists. And so that's basically what happens. And the BIP300 text should explain this, and now it's a little shorter. Every time it gets revised, every few years, it gets a little shorter and a little clearer. So if you went to the official Bitcoin BIPs repository, and you could read it there, and that's kind of the logic of it. Now, of course, you could add a second. You could just activate BIP300 again. It would have like different, like kind of prefix bytes, and it would basically just say like there's like now a parallel 256. There's now even more.
I suppose my understanding, I guess from reading it, I haven't read the revised version. I don't know when they updated it recently, but was that there is like a message request that you have to specifically send, and I didn't know if like how involved a miner has to be really, if like it's just a matter of changing their template in order to accept like a message, or if it's just a transaction itself that has a certain like opcode that uses the message spend. But I thought it was just like an RPC message or something like that.
It's different for the blind merge mining, which happens for every sidechain, every block, or maybe even more frequently or some other level of frequency. That would happen all the time. It's the blind merge mining, and then the deposits and withdrawals. So these are separated. BIP 300 is the deposits and withdrawals, and blind merge mining is BIP 301. And so to create a sidechain, this does require a little bit of like miner attention. And that's important because we don't like the true limit is kind of like a human limit. It's not like it is to some extent like, would you want to open like a store that has like these 14 or 15 sub stores in it? And the ideal thing is that the L2s would be making so much money for the miners, or they'd be expected to make so much money for the miners that it wouldn't matter. And another part of the theory is that right now, back when I first came up with Drivechain, the miners were being asked to weigh in on like SegWit2x and hard fork Bitcoin XT. So actually, this was a way of minimizing back then. It's different now, but back then this would have lowered and minimized the amount of attention that miners had to pay towards these types of things. Now we've got miners who are totally absentee, negligent miners, and they don't do anything, even in their own financial best interest, even in Bitcoin's best interest. So
Yeah, I think it seems like the spec is like largely like looking at the enforcer code, seeing exactly like this like how it is added to the invalidate block script or something like that, on whether or not maybe there is like an index that was added that miners are going to enforce, uh, not ticking up or down or something like that.
well, I didn't totally understand your question. So are you asking about are you asking about deposits withdrawals or blind merge mining or?
No, I was just asking about the like kind of like just a technical detail, I suppose, about like how difficult it is to just like modify the block template or an RPC request in order to like or not ACK a bundle, but in order to just add a new sidechain like to that 256. Like I know it. I guess like it's
Yeah,
not. Yeah.
I think, okay, so like for the blind merge mining, not really at all, because it's very blind on purpose. But for deposit and withdrawal, yeah, to create the new sidechain, they do kind of have to make like a Coinbase transaction. So of course the miners edit their Coinbase transaction all the time to put like, they graffiti in there like which mining pool mined the block and stuff, which is interesting. And then they have all kind for SegWit, it became mandatory to have the witness discount block, to have this Coinbase output. So they certainly know how to do it. And we have a block maker software that works with QSIF, Core Untouched Soft Fork. So that might interest you, the block maker software. And I don't know exactly the easiest way to find the official latest version, but I think if you go to either the layer2labs.com, the GitHub/layer2labs repository section, or BIP300QSIF.com, BIP300CUSF.com. It does link. There's because that is a part of having the core untouched soft fork is like, okay, you have Bitcoin Core and then you have the soft fork activator. But when they make the template, when they make a new block, every miner is going to want to make absolutely sure that they make a block that isn't invalid and that collects as much fees as possible. So that is important that the block constructor sort of be in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks. And then I guess does that work in any way in particular with like the SimplePool software that you're building, like, or they're just kind of unrelated?
Ideally, they'd all be modular and they'd all be really, really good and et cetera, et cetera. SimplePool, I'm really worried that some people are very interested and excited about it, but I think other people think like it's trying to replace Foundry or something. This is supposed to be, it was supposed to be something like Foundry would operate, ideally. Maybe not Foundry specifically, because Foundry has all this extra stuff where they have I think they KYC everyone at Foundry, and I think they produce reports, like audit reports. This is why everyone who wants to go public, I think, is over there. But ideally, Foundry, everyone would run this, and then they'd run some other stuff on top of it. The point of this is that I think it's a very bad situation to be in where we don't necessarily know what software all the mining pools are running, and it's harder for us to start up a new pool without developing one. So I just thought it should be a really, really good project to have an open source mining pool. And so among all of the different projects that we do, that's just one of them. And I still think it should be one of the top, it should get more attention than the Lightning Network. It's never going to happen. But still, this is an important thing where, okay, so yeah, SimplePool should do a lot of stuff. So there's going to be the pool hopper, and there's going to be payouts on the L2, so you can have 8 billion miners, because you can't have 8 billion miners unless you can actually have 8 billion people get paid out. So SimplePool is pretty ambitious, even though it's very simple also. And it should be, ideally, SimplePool would expand and it would include all types of firmware stuff, and it would include all the different like how to signal for soft forks, how to signal for, how to show your opinion, and how to enforce the QSIF soft forks, core and touch soft fork. So ideally, it would all be wrapped up into there at some point. And ideally, it'll all be modular. So yeah.
But it's easy to like run this stuff on the Signet that you have set up, correct? Or like that's how it was tested, or?
Well, of course, the pool doesn't make that much sense on Signet because there's no mining. But it's still possible to test. It's still a good test. So yeah, and I think, these days it's never been easier for people to write software. And especially something like this where pooled mining has been done, for whatever, 10, 15 years. So it should be possible to create something that is very competitive, because as I tried to look around, I looked around for months and months. Maybe I just didn't find it. I don't know. But you can't really find like good open source mining pool software that I could find, and you can't really find even stuff like Stratum v2. I thought it was actually not in very good shape, and it's been going on and on for something like 7 years. And I thought it's like bad ideas, bad design, not even executed, not even finished. So I thought we could do better,
Yeah, definitely.
We could do better.
I guess like it should be possible, I suppose, then to just use that block core and touch soft fork creator and like mine yourself during the fork to add your own sidechain if you wanted to.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think they're separate issues. Like, of course, you could solo mine or mine with the pool. I can imagine a situation where either of those two people don't know how to actually add. Okay, what we had was a long time ago, and I think we still have this, because maybe like a long time ago when we had like an old rudimentary version of Drivechain that we're just kind of fooling around with. But still, this would have been like 2020 or something. We had this Bitcoin QT. It was a fork of Bitcoin 1699. And in that, the QT client, you could like propose a sidechain. There were like little buttons you could click. And you could act if you solo mined with the CPU. Now, of course, that's not practical. But the point is, I think Bitwindow like copied all that stuff over from that of the QT client. I'm not sure. I got to double check that. But I think you can still press buttons. So, you know what I mean? It's at the GUI level where you can like type it out and click, and then they'll show up the proposed sidechains, and you can like click a button. So yeah, ideally Bitwindow would then be talking to like the pool hopper. And it's funny that all this stuff is actually related, because a lot of the op return drama, which is all nonsensical, but a lot of that is related to like the fact that we relay transactions like in a kind of communist hippie way, where the transaction relay is done like for free among the nodes. And if instead you just directly connected to the pool and submitted your transaction, none of this idea of the difference between a transaction standardness to transaction validity and transaction standardness, that distinction would make absolutely no sense whatsoever, and this whole idea could never have come up. So the whole debate over op return for the last year or year and a half or whatever, that whole debate was kind of partially kicked off by Slipstream, maybe, or like Marathon's idea of you can just paste the transaction here and you can go right directly to the miner, like miner direct. This idea, of course, that idea is super old, like whatever, Bitmain and whatever, and Antpool and stuff used to do that. There used to be during the block size war, the blocks were full and there was no RBF, replaced by fee. So you could go to, I don't remember exactly who it was. I think it was maybe like Antpool, and you could go and you could paste your transaction ID that was stuck, and you could pay with a credit card. Okay, you actually pay with you pay with the U.S. credit card, and it would like move it up the line, and that was like replaced by fee with a credit card, because people like Roger Vere's, their $10,000 transaction is stuck, and then if you try to rebroadcast with everyone, it would say it's invalid, and because it's a double spend, so all kinds of wacky stuff would happen. I don't know if this is making any sense at all.
No, it does, yeah. Like, and all the effort that has been put into the mempool when it's like not really even used for mining at all, and it's kind of, if there's not like full blocks and things like this, it's not really that helpful to even really like work on that software. Like cluster mempool, they put so many hours and years into that on core, and now it's just sort of like circumvented by all the knots nodes that kind of like destroy the heuristics I think they were using in order to have like shared mempool state, and then also like it's too slow for miners to actually use to construct blocks, so then they just have their own like mega pool that they support separately. But like, I mean, I guess like testing the mempool stuff is way harder, in order to do that, before the network is alive either. I spun up like a little private signet in order to test like block sidechain stuff, and that's I guess why I'm asking. I think I could do it then on my own, where I just propose a sidechain, maybe edit stuff to the bit window to do that.
Yeah, and so that's really cool. I think it reminded me of, okay, because you asked previously about like, will it all be, to what extent is it all related? And I do think Bitwindow would have in it, like, it should be possible for the software to know a lot about which mining pools exist and like what their IP address is and like what their name is and stuff. So it should be possible without like human intervention, just from like looking at the blockchain and the network, for the whole network to know where the mining pools are, and for Bitwindow to know like how to connect to them, so that Bitwindow itself has like a thing where it will just submit your transaction to the different mining pools. And I think, I just wanted to repeat what I said before about like, this is kind of a weird flaw in Bitcoin, or kind of a quirk of Bitcoin. And it doesn't really, it's kind of a quirk because on one hand it doesn't work, but on the other hand it doesn't matter. So the fact that it doesn't work, it doesn't make any difference. But sort of Slipstream was saying, just give us your transaction and we'll bypass everyone's mempool. And then the knots people were saying, well, this is not allowed in my mempool. And then you had like, the anti-knots people say, they would say correctly that, well, hey, you can just run it with no mempool. But I think you can tell, you seem like you kind of know what you're talking about. You can see like all these people are kind of like talking past each other, and because like the knots people, they don't really want to run a node that has no mempool. But the question is like, what do they think this is achieving? And I don't know. The answer is me. I have no idea. But
yeah, I don't. I think it really is just like almost like just trying to get rid of the usage of layer one, except for like automated like open channel type stuff. That's like at least what the core route seemed to have been going for, largely, with even since RBF, I suppose. Like that was the dream, and then I think the knots people kind of don't really even care for Lightning that much, and just kind of want more, which is kind of strange because they want, I think, more utilization of the main chain, but they don't want inscriptions and things like that. So they're, I don't know, that's what I see as being the.
Exactly. It's really a circle. It doesn't make any sense. We have someone up, a new person, Palter Blank. Welcome. But it doesn't make any sense because today, Bitcoin maximalism basically means using Bitcoin as little as possible. It's like, it's really bizarre. It's like flipped around. I don't know exactly what's going on myself, but the knots people, they're sort of like, they really think like it's important how many nodes there are and how many mempools there are. But really, this whole thing is just a confusion. And if instead the network was set up to be pool aware, you would just submit the transactions to a pool. It would be clear to you why you would want to do that, and it would be clear to the pool why they would want to accept it, because they get the fee. And it would also be clear, I think SPY mining hadn't been invented, or it wasn't appreciated until like 2015, 2016. So it was a few years in Bitcoin. So people thought, well, if we just submit it to a pool, the pool will just keep all the transactions for themselves. And then the bigger pools will get bigger. And none of that happens because the pools connect to each other. Those of you in the audience who are interested, the pool each pool sends out like a little tiny mercenary spy to all. They connect as if they're mining, so all the pools know what each other pool is doing, thanks to spy mining, because the pool has to tell them exactly what block to find. So it's kind of works itself out.
And I think they mostly just don't want to be mining on an invalid block, like a stale
Yeah,
block.
they definitely do not. And there's some privacy concerns about, oh, hey, if you have to submit directly to the pool, then the pool knows, like when you submit your IP, when you connect to them, it's like, oh, but people can beat that now that with VPNs and stuff. So again, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The bigger deal is apparently that so many people are so confused about what the mempool does, and so many people care.
I guess just more of like an empirical question, like what type of software do you think is like the most costly to write in this process?
You mean out of everything that I've been doing?
Yeah.
Everything I've ever touched? Are we talking about like just hardest, like in terms of like the human cost, or like the creativity, or just the actual like raw engineering, like ironing out all the?
Well, I suppose, I guess I'm not factoring in the ideas that you've already like come up with, but like, the implementation of a lot of these, like distributed systems and stuff.
I feel bad if we get. Well, I'll answer your question, but let's see. We got what's his name? What's his Poulter? Someone here, Mr. Poulter Blank, and we should maybe let them talk. But until they talk and interrupt us, I'll answer your question, which is okay. I made one huge blunder, I think, if you actually are interested, which is we had this 0.1699 Bitcoin Core, and it worked with Drivechains for a long time, like years ago. Of course, it's very rudimentary, and we were just hacking around and messing around with it, and we had lots of stuff. Like I had a comma to separate the 8 decimal points. We had all kinds of like funny stuff. So this was like the wacky Paul Stortz software, and it was kind of like knots, and it was just like we threw in all kinds of stuff. We had a block explorer like in the Bitcoin Qt client, but because of the way Qt works and the way Core works, so it was like there's no way we were ever going to get a pull request into Bitcoin Core for all this stuff that we added. We were just like having fun, and it's kind of a little bit like Lib Bitcoin. We're just like doing our own thing, just like like a flying saucer, just hovering around. But the point is, then I decided, okay, well, listen, instead of do the pull request to Bitcoin Core for BIPs 300, 301, we could just write this enforcer. But the big mistake was what I forgot was I really already had an enforcer. The Bitcoin Qt project that was the fork of Bitcoin 1699, that already would have worked. It could have just scanned all the blocks like in parallel and then given a thumbs up, thumbs down, and then you could have Bitcoin Core call invalidate block. So basically I did a ton of work to create what is the current Rust-based BIP 300, 301 enforcer. And kind of in retrospect, I think it's possible that it could have done all of that work. All of that work was for no reason. Possible, not necessarily, but so that was a kind of wacky story. I'm not sure if that really answers your question.
No, that does for sure. Yeah, that it seems like that invalidate block, the thing that actually activates like the Drivechain through Core and Touch soft work, is like probably like the most high assurance. So like took a lot more work.
And that one can't be. If that one has any bugs, it's very bad because the pitch for the Core and Touch soft fork is you don't have to modify Bitcoin Core, but you can run this thing next to Bitcoin Core. But then if the thing you run next to Bitcoin Core is like crashing or like really misbehaving, then they'll just think, oh, why did I do this? This was a mistake. So then they shut it off, and then BIP 300, 301 deactivates, and then it's like that's not good because then anyone can take all the money out of the L2s. So that would not be good. Although it's no different than any other soft fork in that way. But yeah, of course the idea of QSIP is that it's so difficult to get anything done in Bitcoin Core that that's basically the only option. And
it seems like a lot of the design decisions flow down from the Core and Touch, like the invalidate block call, and then like how you activate everything. Like that's what I found to be the best way of understanding, I suppose, the software.
Yeah.
Like,
And Bitwindow, that's way more of a move fast and break things situation. So Bitwindow has tons of like bells and whistles. It has all kinds of crazy stuff on it. And of course, Bitwindow, ideally it would look nice on all three operating systems, and it would have like different screen resolutions and stuff. So that one is kind of like more of like an infinite project where that would like never be completed, like you would just keep iterating on it like forever. So there's a different sense in which that one would consume the most total hours, but it's completely different type of project. And it is, if there's problems with Bitwindow, it almost doesn't matter because people could still fall back on using like their phone wallet or any kind of like, they could even use something rudimentary, or they could use the RPC to like save all of their spend and receive coins on L1. So Bitwindow is like totally superfluous. It's like just a cosmetic thing. But that one would consume a lot of time. Then there's all the different L2s. So like Thunder is just L2 with large block sizes. But we ran the hackathon last year to see who could optimize the performance. And so that was a lot of smart people optimized the software, made it super fast. That's very, very different from something like, when I did Truthcoin DC, which is like my prediction market thing, which is like this really bizarre, really creative thing that was like super ahead of its time. It was like prediction markets on Bitcoin back in the year 2013. So that was like this wild idea back then. Now it's been 13 years, so people have slowly caught up to me. But yeah, we got another new person. I don't know if we've done a Polter Blank, doesn't seem in the talkative mood, but we also have Dev 3 something, whatever. So, hello.
Yeah, hi, Paul. Thank you for having me up. I've recently been labeled as one of your haters. Kind of astounded that you don't read Leet. It's Dave Toshi. Thank you for having me up here. I think I've maybe erroneously been added to this list of haters. I think the discussion was regarding the way that you've chosen to distribute. I guess like a fair question would be, do you view a great bootstrapping for a new chain that's supposed to be the future of scaling through Drivechains and the tech that you've put together to be distributed to a lot of people, a large proportion of people who are diametrically opposed to the idea as sell pressure, like on day zero and at zero cost?
Well, it's a good question. The whole idea of the Satoshi half airdrop is to kind of split the difference to some extent, so that it's like on one hand it rewards BTC holders, on the other hand, anyone who is like a big supporter, an early supporter, they get disproportionately more. So it was supposed to kind of split the difference there. So I guess my question for you would be, what would it be instead? Like you could either do a pure altcoin. Yeah. What's your preferred thing?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that I don't have to talk to you about the merits of like a fair launch. Like that's I think that's something that's
yeah.
like
But what's the fair? What's the fair launch though?
Zero allocated, apart from perhaps like you've taken some strategic capital, which I think is a great idea, by the way. So, which is why I'm a little bewildered as to why I landed on the hater list. I think that was a great idea with Satoshi's piece of the pie. That strategic capital is probably going to help in the long run. But for the rest of it, why not start from zero, from Genesis? Like, why would you want to have a duplicate of every single asset in Ordinals and Bitcoin holdings? Like, would you want the rich list as you see it today? MicroStrategy, BlackRock, a couple of large funds to hold the lion's share of your token. Like, what would make you think that they're aligned with your vision?
Well, not all of them are. First of all, if you could think about it this way. Okay, maybe Michael Saylor owns, I don't know, 5% or whatever it is throughout his various. So that means that he would get an F, right? And 95% are not Michael Saylor. So that's an A plus or an A at least. So actually, most of them are not. I think there's a few people who are allowed and a lot of people who are quiet, and the quiet people are in many ways smarter. If you own Bitcoin, why tell anyone about it? So I think it is certainly the case that the community adds a lot of value to a project. You can look at, for example, when Bitcoin Cash did its hard fork. I thought that the Bitcoin Cash hard fork had a long list of problems, like bad ideas, bad implementation, but still, on the day that it actually debuted, which is like November, something like November or something, where this is where I know it's confusing for anyone who's going to go back and research the timeline. They're going to see, well, it was created on August 1st. But trust me, if you lived through it, no one was talking about it at all. Everyone was talking about SegWit2x until like November 7th or something. So the real first day that Bitcoin Cash kind of debuted, and when someone like some of the big large blockers who abandoned SegWit2x said this is the next big thing, this was back in 2017. But Bitcoin Cash went up and it became the number 2 coin for like a day. It flipped Ethereum for like one day. And then, of course, it didn't maintain that performance. But I think that speaks to the fact that, okay, so like, here's another fun fact for you. I don't know, I used to do this trick and add it up, but I haven't looked recently, but I'm pretty sure if you cut the Bitcoin market cap in 4, you cut it 25%. You cut it to 25%. I think it's still bigger than Ethereum. So, like most of the world is Bitcoin, and a lot of this other stuff is not very good. And there is a sense in which Bitcoin is more than just a project that a few people own. It is kind of a public movement to achieve something, and I think that that's kind of it's worth respecting that. And also, you've kind of contradicted yourself a little bit, because you're saying if you raise money for the war chest, then how can you have to do a pre-mine then? So you said a fair launch with 0 allocation, but then how do you do the money?
Oh no, I hadn't contradicted myself. I've baked in an excuse for you. To the contrary, like you've already done that raise, haven't you? So it's like we can't retroactively unraise the money, unless I misunderstood.
Well, you can undo things. Anything you do. It's not true that anything you do can undo, but I'm saying that. I mean, what you're suggesting, I think,
but 0 like from scratch would be better. Is my opinion on that.
Well, I think I just gonna have to disagree, because I think then how can you reward the people who try to make sure that it's a high quality project when it's actually created and released?
By having them contribute to the network the same way they did with Bitcoin and every other fair launch proof of work coin.
I don't know if think about it like this. Satoshi had to work for free for a long time. Then he launched BTC for free. And then he mined it like he was the only miner for a little while. So he had to pay for the electricity and all that stuff. He got nothing for any of that work. Now, I think that's actually a mistake. I'm not actually comfortable with a world where a genius inventor also has to be independently wealthy and altruistic in order to bring his idea out into the world. I think that's a big mistake. Of course, he must have known a lot of things at the time where he thought like, okay.
Did he though? Did he have to be independently wealthy? I mean, maybe to afford working, like to be able to put in the time possibly, but to mine the network, to switch on a single CPU and run a node. I don't think he needed to be independently wealthy for that. Did he?
No, I'm talking about the time, the engineering time and the risk and all that. Yeah. I mean, it was like a multi-year project, probably.
That I can't disagree with.
So someone who's that smart, could have worked and poured their time into some other thing, whatever. Whatever thing was popular at the time. So yeah, that's like multi-$100,000 outlay. upfront, when there's no. So I just think I think that's barbaric, actually, and I think our capitalist world is better if you have someone down the street who thinks they have a better strategy for mowing lawns, but they need a $3,000 lawnmower, and you have an old retiree who has a bunch of cash under the mattress that they're not using for anything, and that the two of them should be able to cooperate to make the innovation happen faster. Or why would we want to wait for the kid to work as a waiter for 10 years to save up for this lawnmower? That seems like a huge.
It could if you put it into that frame, but if you take it out of that frame and put it back into the reality of like launching a proof of work chain today, I don't think you'd be in that scenario at all. I think there's plenty of people that have hardware and that are ready to spin up and mine. So I don't think you would have that distribution problem where you would be the sole miner who needs to be independently wealthy on eCash.
I think maybe
it's not about the mining.
I think maybe what you're missing is just that like all the Bitcoiners who currently exist, who are developers who you would want on your project, are already invested in Bitcoin. So if you just make something else, they could sell some of their Bitcoin in order to buy it, but many people won't like do that because of like switching costs or something like that.
So you're saying those would be people that don't believe in the project?
Well, maybe they do, but for whatever reason, like they don't come to that realization soon enough, and the guy who did realize it a little bit quicker than them got to it first, and you don't really want that like first mover type of person in order like to develop a project,
I don't know if I would optimize for that. And I would also take a look at some of the evidence recently. Like, have you looked at what people are doing with airdrops recently, like in the crypto world? Like, there's been a lot of very large airdrops this year. You can just take a look at how those networks.
But I haven't. Performed. But I don't think that any are comparable, except for the Bitcoin Cash one, which I think is actually much worse than this one in a few ways, although better in one or two other ways. But I don't think maybe you can give me an example. But I mean, for one reason is I haven't heard of it, and that's I think partly why it's a bad idea. It's partly a clue to me. But yeah, why don't you give me an example?
Oh yeah, sure. They're plentiful. Like you could take a look at literally any launch that's happened in the past 3 years. They've been pretty much down only. Anything that's been airdropped.
I know, but can you just give us an example? Because my assertion is that we're not even talking about the same category of thing.
Sure. Would something like Monad work for you, or Mega ETH? Would those work as like blockchain?
Yeah, I've heard of both of those. I don't actually know that much about them. So why don't you tell me how do they do the airdrop?
There's through various different ways, through campaigns, through I don't know. Just through owning certain assets.
I meant who gets the coin basically, and
owning certain assets, and just I don't know. Just
I mean, why is this like a really hard question or something? I was thinking this would be an easy question. Like for what I was expecting you to say was
it's actually
on Monad last year. Monad gave every Bitcoin holder one coin each, and then there's 21 million Monad. Etc. And then you're going to tell me about a disaster. That's like what I thought you were going to say. I didn't expect you to say various.
You were expecting.
This is like that Ryan producer.
You were expecting the schema for every airdrop to be just really simple. Yeah, that's unfortunately not how things work now.
I know, but I don't think you know how. I mean, you may know how things work over in. That's what I was talking about. With ETH is really small compared to BTC.
Also,
yeah,
the distribution was really weird at the start, and still
maybe by market cap, and this whole Bitcoin is the world thesis that you gave us before about cutting it into 4 pieces and it's still bigger than ETH. Yeah, that's when you're looking at market cap. So what if you look at on-chain activity? If you were to glance over the mempool right now, how much on-chain activity do you see? The project that you're focusing on is to bring people on chain last time I checked. So the lion's share of that activity.
Yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir. I was the one for years and years. I would go on. You can find plenty of tweets of mine if you scroll back. You'll see there's tweets where I have screenshots about how Ethereum has passed Bitcoin in transaction fees from 2021, 2020. I've been telling people to go to cryptofees.info. If people look up the recording for last week, they see I bring that up.
So if we
all the time. So I agree with you about that.
Right. So if we were to divide by 4, we would probably take something like transaction volume, maybe notional principal that's been transferred. You have a
Yeah, and I
useful
think if you
capital
divide
TVL.
Ethereum by 4, I think it's still bigger than BTC's transaction volume. So you're right, it's the opposite. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you're saying airdrops are a bad idea, and then I said, can you give me an example of one? And you said there's various examples.
I could say,
can you just give me an example of one that you think is
I could say
comparable?
confidently that you could take a look at any airdrop that has happened over the past 2 years and look at the token price. It's not even questionable. It's overwhelming.
I know, but that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you for one example.
Monad.
Okay, but how does Monad explain to me how the airdrop worked?
It's not a transparent metric. They didn't drop to only Bitcoiners, if that's what you mean.
I know, but that's what this is, though. So I think that's a big difference, especially if it's so convoluted that it can't be explained in like a few sentences to someone when it's the shining city on a hill example of something gone wrong. I just don't understand why I'm not getting the explanation.
You're not getting the explanation because Monad has not produced a very clear airdrop guideline. Nor have any of the networks really that have done an airdrop that I followed.
Well, isn't this then much more straightforward? It just says if you own Bitcoin, you get eCash. It's exactly the same, 21 million eCash, with one exception.
Yes, this one would be much more straightforward. I think the result would be the same.
I think also, like, I don't know a lot about those other projects, Monad or Mega ETH. I've heard of both of them, but that's basically it. But yeah, this project, I believe that there will be one big cryptocurrency that survives, and it is used by 8 billion people at some point, and then the rest will be just kind of like collector's items, and they will not be worth very much. So yeah, I think it's 200 trillion to the victor, and everything else zero basically. So I'm not sure. Was it really? Maybe it is. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But was Monad going out there saying, this is our plan to get to 8 billion users?
Yes, I think that's the plan and intent of every single network launch, including eCash. And if the one that you had in mind is Bitcoin, and the one that you envision going to zero is eCash, then airdropping, I think, is a great bootstrapping tech.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the community is really worth it. The community is what makes it happen. And yeah, I think there have been a few loud people have kind of ruined everything. These are people who joined in after like 2020, and they make a lot of noise, and they own 0.000003 Bitcoin. And then now they're weighing in. They joined in like 2021, and they're weighing in on like CTV or something that was shipped project like years before they even entered into the community, or they're weighing in on op return. And
are some of those people?
New people are not. Yeah, we want those people to sell and get out. They will destroy the BTC project, and if they don't sell, they'll just destroy any project that they talk into.
What if those are the exact same people that make up the volume that you see on Ethereum that you want on eCash?
I don't think that's true, because actually the Ordinals people are kind of the big transaction fee payers on BTC. And so even though I'm not like a big Ordinals person, that was a clue of that actually the people who are the users are breathing life into the project, and the people complaining about Ordinals are like deranged cultists who are ignorant mostly, and they're going to hold the project back and stop it from growing to satisfy their own weird like virtue signaling.
Oh, we can use that as an example, actually. Like, if you want it, it's funny that you bring that up. Here's a great example for airdrops. Why don't you take a look at the airdrops that were done to these ordinal enjoyers that you're speaking of? Like, for example, Doggo to the Moon, and maybe just pull up the chart, or take a look at RSIC miners or any of the other stuff that those people received and what they did with those assets. Spoiler, they're
I
literally
would
all at
sell.
zero. Like they're all at zero.
Yeah, but do you really think this is the same as? I've already forgotten what was it? Dogs? I already forgotten what the name is.
That's probably. Yeah, I think we've all already forgotten.
I think this project is in kind of a different category than that. No offense, but you go to layer2labs.com/friends, you can see all the people who endorse BIP300, not necessarily eCash, but BIP300. And there's plenty of people up there, like Fiat Joff, creator of Nostr. He's like basically, it's a matter of life and death for Bitcoin whether or not we get Drivechains on BTC, and Adam Back saying that it was arguably Drivechain would have been more useful than or more useful than Taproot. So I don't think this is really the same as just.
Well,
that's my point. Is a lot of the airdrops were frivolities, and I think that has distracted people from the fact that the airdrop is actually a good idea. We should have more people doing Bitcoin hard forks. I think everyone gets free coins. People can sell or buy as they wish, and I think people should have privatize the coins too, because that encourages them to put a lot of effort in upfront to make sure coin is like a finished product when it launches, and you don't need like maintainers or these weird people that you have to trust maintaining. So I think that my idea is, or just my entire list of ideas, are all of them way, way, way better than just saying, oh, someone launched a coin and airdropped it to Ordinals holders. I just don't, I just don't agree.
I think one of the key distinctions is that you don't really need any new coins once you add a method to like successfully activate a side chain this is what Drivechains does.
So hold on, let's just put this on record since it's being recorded. So you don't envision there being massive downside pressure when you launch this, given the distribution mechanism?
Well, the current market price is, it's not literally zero, I suppose, but I mean, down from what? Like down from 76,000 per coin?
Would you go from
Yes.
like opening day, like just, a chart that looks like from top left to bottom right instead of the opposite?
Yeah, but where does it open at though?
We'll see. I mean, I'm sure people will speculate and put a value on it. But when it does, there's going to be a certain depth that people are going to print into the bids on. But okay.
I mean,
no, but what do you think? Is it really? Is it really such an unfair question? Like you're saying the chart is going to have a certain shape.
You want me to value? You want me to value it?
You're going to predict the shape, but not the average?
Yeah, I don't know. It's fine.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, so people will bid in some kind of a pre-market or something. They'll come up with some valuation. Okay,
of course. But what do you think it's going to be?
It'll probably come out higher than what it will be a week later, and a week after that, and a couple of weeks after that. That's what a downward chart looks like.
Have you heard of the efficient markets hypothesis?
Yes, I have.
Say it's all random walk.
Have you looked at IPOs and chain genesises for like the past, I don't know, a little more than a decade? I think as an economist, you see blatant violations. The existence of efficient markets come from an arbitrage. The arbitrage doesn't exist unless there's an inefficiency.
Right.
That's why we have volatility.
There used to be a joke, IPO, it's probably overpriced. And even when they had the ICOs, I did a different joke. You can probably find all these jokes on Twitter, Paul's Wacky Joke Compendium.
Yeah, well, these are oldies but goodies. I've seen a lot of JP Morgan backed price to perfection IPOs in my lifetime that were never priced to perfection. So have you. So a down only chart, I think, is
really hard. It's like
understand.
It's kind of like throwing a party. I think. There's a sense in which I agree with you, which is that the hard fork, it has a limited amount of time to prove itself, and it probably more than 50% chance it probably will not prove itself. So in that sense, you can expect the chart to go from the top left to the bottom right. But the question is, if everyone expects it to have that shape, then that can only be, I think, since you know about the efficient markets hypothesis, you know that can only mean that it has something like a 10% chance of jumping way back over the initial top left number. You cannot have it predictably go down, because then it would just start down. So I'm not sure exactly how to answer your question. I think this project has only, a 10-ish% chance of succeeding. So I think it should be expected to fail. But certainly if it succeeds, it will do much more than 10x. It may even do 10,000x.
Well,
or
again, that's like, now you're going to use the starting price that we've agreed we don't know to price in a 10x.
Well, I have some idea of what it is. I'm just curious to see your thought process.
Right? We can't really do either.
Well, I guess, Dev, I just have like a question. So like, don't you think that like the possibility of it becoming something that beats Bitcoin is something that like is worth like a tail risk that people wouldn't want to sell right away?
I think if that's the case, people would be willing to contribute hash and talent and time, which are probably what it needs more than someone who's acquired a lion's share of Bitcoin or a very large portfolio. I'm not sure that.
But that's like,
but we already have a lot of
chicken and egg.
talent, and the hash rate will follow the value of the coin and the transaction fee volume. So that's those two go hand in hand. But yeah, like a lot of talent has already been added. So I think people don't realize that this is like a project that we haven't been working on it full time, but people have been like tinkering on this project for like 8 years or so. And in the background, there are all kinds of people for all of Bitcoin's history have been saying, oh, we have to get rid of Lightning. It doesn't work. And other people have been saying, oh, Paul's idea is actually really, really good. We desperately need this idea. So you can look at layer2labs.com/friends. So this is not like just decided on a random Tuesday to launch a hard fork, and my only idea is for it to be a hard fork of Bitcoin. That's not what's happening at all. What's happening is that the BTC community has entered like a cultural death spiral where it can't talk about its own problems or fix them, even though fixing them would be relatively easy, but not in the current culture. It's basically impossible. And this is like a life raft escaping the sinking ship. And I'm not even sure what it would mean if this project failed. It might mean that Bitcoin was healthier than I thought, but it might also mean that Bitcoin is even more doomed than I thought. I'm not exactly sure. So this is not just.
Well, maybe I can first of all, thanks for having me up here. Despite my
it's not just whatever rigatoni, Moroni. I forgot. Yeah, you're welcome.
My views.
Thanks for because a lot of people don't come. A lot of people are haters, and I think, okay, well, hey, come up and explain why you think it's because no serious person is going to say, oh, I could fit it all into a tweet why this is a bad idea. So I think if someone really thinks it's a bad idea, they should definitely come up, and we want to hear about why. So thanks for coming.
Well, that wasn't like parting words. I wanted to mention that we haven't really heard your idea of why. Like, you've obviously just said that you weighed all these things. So you looked at a fair launch and you said that's not a good idea. Well, what's the upside of doing it this way? How does it, you're trading off some sell pressure initially, which I think you conceded on during our conversation, that there probably will be some initial sell pressure based on it being an airdrop. So you're trading that off against what exactly? What's the major upside to dropping to that rich list?
Well, I guess I'm still a little confused, because let me paint two pictures here. I'm going to draw with my pen and paper. Okay, on maybe if it's a pure altcoin and there's zero coins on day one, then first 10 minutes you mine a block, and it's the first 50 coins. And because of the way Bitcoin works, it's an obscure rule. You can't spend it for 100 blocks, excuse me. So then 100 blocks later, basically the next day, people can sell the first 50 coins, and it starts at 1/100th of a cent, but it starts going up, and it's going up and up and up and up and up and up.
Well, it doesn't start there, Paul. It starts where the buyer and seller agree it starts, right? So that person who mined the first block. I know,
but I was just giving you an example.
Well, the person who mined the first block would be the seller, right? So he would have to find a buyer. It wouldn't start at zero or a fraction of a penny. It would start where they agreed to trade.
Well, I was just kind of trying to copy Bitcoin. Bitcoin kind of started at 0, and then it was 10,000 for 2 pizzas, and then it was, so I was just saying like Bitcoin is because okay, maybe I was giving a long-winded explanation. So the short answer is I'm thinking like, okay, it's either you create something and then it's very illiquid on day one, but the price is low because it's brand new. It doesn't have a community and it doesn't have whatever.
It has Paul Stork behind it. It has the vision of a Drivechain empowered future. Like there's a lot baked into it. Like I don't want to discount that.
I don't think actually that's as good, because if the Drivechain powered future is so good, then BTC will just end up, because BTC could just activate Drivechain at any time. It's only because of the cultural derangement that they can't. So if they were cured of that misapprehension, then it would be rough competing with BTC if it's a coin that just launched like 3 or 4 months ago. But it would, it'd mostly be similar, I think. What I was saying is, I think that the price is like a lot of people have this view about the whole, the so-called sell pressure, but every sell is a buy, as you just said. So it's also buying pressure.
I know it's not a market depth to balance that, right? And it obviously becomes overwhelmed when you have people that got something for free. It's just what we've seen often. But go ahead, tell me, what's the upside to the rich list?
Well, for starters, okay, you can look at because I lived through the BCH block size war, and even though there were so many people weighing in, a month after month, and et cetera, those people weighed in and they complained about, they said Lightning sucks, or they said Bitcoin Cash sucks, or they said everything sucks. So, but after a year afterwards, the UTXO sets had not diverged by more than half. It was like 60% identical. And even if you only want to sell 1% or a tiny portion of your coins in a UTXO, you have to move the whole UTXO and it would count as diversion. If you sell and then bought back, it would. So most of the people in the BTC world, even in the BTC BCH split, most of them did not move their coins at all, either way. So I think those are the real Bitcoiners, and they didn't sell, and they, as far as I can tell, they didn't talk either. They just quietly held both, and that's more than half after a year. So I think you're focused kind of like on how the price chart looks, but I'm focused more on what does the winning community want the most. And what they want is to get everything for free in a gift wrapped box. And then they will, if you respect them, they will respect you back. They'll say,
right.
This is what I want to see more of, getting free.
That's part of why they have fraud proofs and optimistic rollups, is because there has to be a correction for this over optimism, doesn't there?
You mean in optimism in what sense? From the BTC community, that everything's going to work out and everyone will be rich?
That if we just airdrop to everybody, they will believe. Enough of them will believe. We'll put money in their pockets, but they're not going to take it now.
I'm not necessarily asking. I mean, you have a very interesting way of thinking about it. Your way seems to be, if you airdrop to people, they'll sell, and that's bad. But I'm kind of thinking if we airdrop to people, then they'll sell, and that's good, because now they found a buyer. They're thinking about the project. Whereas if instead you launch from 0 coins, then it's much easier to ignore, because no one has any coins, no one has any skin in the game. I would rather that people sell and actually do something than do nothing.
If you did it, look, if you did it that way, okay, and SHA-256 was the algorithm, and let's say it was not merged, is it going to be is Oxpow going to be enabled? What would the miner choice be?
No, the L1 is SHA-256, and it is not merge mined with BTC. The L2s are merge mined with
So the choice
L1.
The choice there would be pretty obvious, right? Each block would have an electric floor, wouldn't it? And it would also have the opportunity cost of mining Bitcoin instead. using the same algo. Therefore, like each.
Well, we cut the difficulty. The difficulty we cut way down. So at first it would be a no-brainer that you would mine it. You would mine the eCash because the difficulty would be so low, even though the price is also low. They cancel out.
I've seen like new networks launch. Like you can look at Pearl. I think you might be underestimating like how many people will participate on day zero, like at Genesis. I don't think that would be the case at all.
I'm hoping more people will. I want more participants.
I think you would have a lot of participants,
you seem to think
and you would have a high electric floor, and you would have value beyond zero. A balance in your account, or sorry, a balance in your account would be an acquisition of eCash at zero, a mined coin with a much slower release schedule is an entirely different thing with an electricity floor baked into it.
I mean, I think the difference between the two of us is I want people to sell. Does that make sense? I tell that you don't believe me because you think that selling means the price is going down, but that's, first of all, that's mathematically not possible. Actually, every sell is a buy. So actually, but I know what you mean. You mean that there'll be people who don't value the thing and they want to get rid of it, and they want to. We got someone who wants to come up. And they are flashing the emoji. They're like their heart, like their life depends upon it. So we'll get them up, and then there's like a 20-second delay.
Forgive me, Dave. Forgive me for what I'm about to do, Dave. Paul, have you ever spoke to Dave before? Okay,
no, I don't think
I just
so.
wanted to get that out there. Dave happens to be locked into the early mining scene, so he is advocating for his bags to pump as soon as possible, I do believe, versus
special pleading.
Yeah, he doesn't want to hold.
Now it all comes out. Yes,
you, Dave.
He's got a bunch of. He's got a hydroelectric dam somewhere that he knows where
he's been doing this
the owner
every
sleeps
day
at
this
night.
week, by the way. So have fun. I'm just gonna sit here and listen and laugh.
Sure, you're speaking with a notorious troll who's like taking, I don't know, what seemingly was a good conversation about a fair launch versus a distributed launch, and tried to destroy
Okay, here's my real take, Dave. Here's my real take.
But being selfish. Everyone's got
You're being selfish, Dave, and that we do not onboard Bitcoiners with your method.
But it's true that like everyone has their own thing that would benefit them slightly more, and this is like whatever you do is going to make a lot of people. Of course, if you do the fair launch, you say then you lose all the Bitcoiners who say, hey, why don't I get free coins? Why should I give you any attention at all?
Whereas with this, DGen also launched he launched a proof of work coin, which happened to be a fair launch and did not airdrop to Bitcoiners.
Yeah, 8 years ago. Okay, hold on, relax, everybody.
So I'll go ahead and point out the obvious hypocrisy there, but continue.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, is it really the worst thing? Let's imagine that you're someone like Michael Saylor. There's a hard fork. Now, of course, Michael Saylor hates. I mean, I don't even know if he's thought about it enough to have a real opinion. My guess is no. Honestly, having actually spoken to him, I have actually spoken to him a few times, and I think he doesn't even have any idea what any of this is and what's going on at all. And but I think if he had an opinion, the opinion that's consistent with his previous comments is that he hates privacy, he hates innovation, he hates any software development. He's pro ossification. He's pro a very naive form of ossification where he just kind of thinks that anything you touch is bad. Even though the Bitcoin Core puts out new versions every 6 months and there's no way of stopping them. And there's all these CVEs. There's this whole ecosystem of like. So this is like so my guess is he'd be a hater. Long story short, other than that, he's really friendly. So my guess he'd be a hater, and he'd want to sell. But the point is now you have to kind of go into a room and you have to kind of have a little bit of a think, don't you? You have to kind of think, well, okay, I know that when it didn't matter at all, and I was just bullshitting online. This is me being Michael Saylor, by the way. So he was like, when it didn't matter at all, and I was just bullshitting online, I said I didn't actually care about any of this stuff. Privacy, development, whatever, innovation, soft forks. But now actual money is on the line. And now they have to think, well, wait a minute, like, do I actually really believe any of this stuff? And should I sell all of this or should I sell half of it? So it draws people's attention to the actual ideas. And it says, well, now they have to actually care. If they do that, then I'm guaranteed to win. because I have the best ideas in all the lands. But so that's better than just saying, oh, I launched a new coin starting at 0. Then, that does have some advantages, but the short answer is that
it's just two different
I
crowds.
don't think
Like for example, like you're targeting people that have been in Bitcoin for a lot longer, been in crypto space for a lot longer by doing the way you're doing it. But also, I think Dave does kind of have a point. Like, let's say Michael Saylor is that way. Like he can destroy the entirety of the liquidity, right, by himself, for whatever you got going on at Binance or wherever down the road. So there is some truth to that, where it's like, dude, some of these people got
but
way
how
too
much
coins,
liquidity?
It's amazing that a notorious
how much
troll was able to maintain like sensibility for just like half a second. That was one of the greatest things I think I've ever heard him say.
Can we not steal
He was coherent
Satoshi's
too,
coins?
which
Let's
I'm
steal
very
Saylor's
surprised
coins
by.
instead, Paul. What do you think about that? Is that better or
Well,
worse?
that joke has been made. That joke has been made
I
many
like this.
times.
It's not a joke. This is a serious
and-
suggestion.
Well, it's actually funny. I'll get to that in a second. But let me first. You made me lose my train of thought. I was going to ask you. I was going to say, how much liquidity do we have now? Which the answer is 0. We don't have any. So even if Saylor nukes liquidity for like 3 weeks, we're still in a better position than we are right now. And then on week 4, that'll be like the real day 1, and then it kind of makes it hard to complain for all these people who are like blah blah blah. Oh, I hate eCash. People will be wondering in the back of their head. They'll be thinking, wait a minute, is this one of those? Did they like sell all their? Is that the real reason why? And then they'll think, oh, you know what? I could be the new Michael Saylor if I just buy up all these cheap eCash. So I think it still leaves you with a lot of opportunities.
I don't know that that's
now
really
about
like. I'll play devil's advocate with my own argument for a second, if I may. Like, I don't think that that's really the upside to distributing to the rich list so much as handing people tokens to play with on your network. So they wouldn't have to acquire tokens. They would be able to participate on Drivechains with something in their wallets when they had nothing before, right? That would be the main.
What you're saying, like giving away for free? Is that what you're saying?
That would be the main thing that you would accomplish. Like when I was asking you what the upside is, wouldn't that be one of the major upsides?
Yeah. So you think that's a good thing? I can't even tell.
I'm saying
I think he's suggesting that that's better than just giving it to the rich list.
Like, isn't that the?
But here's the thing: if you add them together, it's the same thing. If you give them to the rich list and they immediately sell,
because distribution lessens the likeliness of it all impacting the price simultaneously, right? So like more distribution equals less price impact direction, like right away.
Well, one thing about the price though is that even the haters, like if you're a hater, you kind of and you want to sell, you still want the price to be high when you sell. So it does kind of create a little bit of a, the people who are, even the people who hate it, all the owners become shills. Even the haters.
Right, but at the beginning, you're going to get this effect like he was explaining earlier, like what we got with Bitcoin Cash, but probably less.
But isn't that fine? Isn't it basically, but that was the point I was going to make earlier, but like, isn't it basically the same thing?
Sorta.
If you start with you start with a few coins being mined, now you have a crazy volatile price, or maybe no price because there's not enough liquidity, or there's just only like an OTC desk or something. And so either way, you're looking at like 3 or 4 weeks of kind of just total chaos before you settle on a price. Right. So it's kind of like,
let's compare it.
Really,
let's say you give it to the whales, right? Then you have one whale, just a single guy. He has, let's say, 0.5% of all Bitcoin. He's now going to have 0.5% of all eCash. That same 0.5% of the supply could have gone to 20,000 people, right? So I think that's the argument here is what's the trade-off between like just directly rewarding the rich list versus like how do we intelligently spread out the coins to make a better distribution?
But I don't think like having 20,000 people separately owning it is really much of a benefit. Like you want it to be in people who are going to like incentivize development.
Not necessarily. Like those people that incentivize development are going to leave your chain in 3 years after you pay them and go to Solana. So like that's not really a long-term process.
No, I agree with JK that it's like, okay, we could give it to 20,000 people, but it's like pearls before swine. Like everyone has an opportunity now today to just buy BTC and then they're in for eCash. And if they don't want to join this,
not to fall for this old school Bitcoin mentality. This is what you guys do. This is the same thing the Bitcoin Cash community did that caused it to be so behind the times. Like you cannot be so royal about everything. Like, oh, we know better because we're Bitcoiners. Like, the industry has moved on, and there's new standards that you guys have to understand at the minimum, so that when you do not comply with those standards of the community, you can at least explain yourself.
Like, straight up, I think that basically everything in crypto has just been living off the corpse of Bitcoin, and there's not a whole lot of value to these projects. It's just a lot of gambling.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, like, that doesn't
How
have to do with
I
20,000
agree
people
with
versus
that,
one
and I would
person.
also agree. Sure. Yeah, I would also. I think we're really trying to get the best of both worlds here, which is we want the innovation to be captured via the Drivechain L2s, but we also want the L1 to not really change that much, and we don't want it to be the subject to all these weird campaigns. Whatever, Bitcoin XT hard fork, Segway 2X. So these are some things that we want, and we kind of want to have it, split the difference and have our cake and eat it too. So I think that, it's funny because this project is criticized as being too big of a change in the BTC world. And then you're saying, well,
Yeah, but all
BTC doesn't
the
change
BTC
enough.
people are fucking morons. Absolute fucking worthless morons. Like, everyone on this app is a fucking retard. Like, I don't know why their opinion matters for even a split second, though.
Well, that's part of the thing about the 20,000 people maybe shouldn't get it because, with someone who's a big concentrated, they used to be called block holders in the stock market world, but that doesn't make sense in the blockchain world. But it's like, these big owners, they have more of a, maybe that's someone who can make a phone call or make something happen for you. And so that could be a lot better. Okay, now wait, we got to get to stealing Saylor's coins as a joke because there's something to it, which is, okay, in order to do that, just hypothetically, you would need to know which UTXOs are his. And that the irony there is that Saylor hates Bitcoin privacy, and he's made all these videos about maybe you don't need a Monero, you can look it up. He's like, maybe you need a Monero. Even Peter McCormack asked him like, hey, what about these people who live in like whatever, like, under an authoritarian state, and they're here for the subversive, they want a property right to they want privacy. And he's like, and Michael Saylor has this answer that's just horrendous basically in lots of ways, where he just says, well, maybe you need a Monero, and then he says, and then the market will determine that, which is just another way of saying, like, I haven't given it any thought and I don't know what I'm talking about. And so that's the thing is Michael Saylor lives in the world where like everything is like done with like SOC reports and there's a corporatization of everything. And so there's like, an official balance sheet with like, accountant and everything.
I'm sorry,
so
Paul,
that's the irony is that the privacy
what are we even
Yes.
talking about here? Like, he just sold 32 corn to go cover a dividend payment. Like, what are we even weighing here?
Oh, you think they're going under? That's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that deleting. We should, this is not a serious suggestion, but it's a decent. The idea that everyone who doesn't care about privacy, we should round up their UTXOs and just delete them or take those, because then until they, the beatings will continue.
I don't think that's the point that we were making. I think the point we're making is it's a distribution mechanic of like, it's a mathematical thing when there's a one person with like 5% of this happens on every single shitcoin launched ever, et cetera, right? Like, we see it every single day. If someone has 5 or more % of a supply, they are detrimental fucking risk to the entire community. And right, that single person. And you could say, oh, well, they're not going to sell, but like, you don't know that.
No, I want them to sell.
Well, that's going to destroy whatever trajectory you have for a year, that kind of stuff. A whole year, not 3 weeks, not 4 weeks, a year, 2 years, 3 years of downward pressure is what you're going to see. So don't forget that part, I think.
But that's up from zero, so I guess that's...
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's up from wherever they sold it from, the first person to get on an exchange. So if me and Dave go wash trade on the first exchange, you guys at some fucking $1 trillion market cap, that is the starting market cap, my dude. It doesn't matter what you say it is.
Not really.
Yes, like, it is. On the chart, every data point, on every tracking mechanism.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I agree with JK that like it doesn't matter. Like, if you fall into a coma and you wake up and you say, well, right now there's no eCash project. It's gonna
matter, my dude.
Maybe. I don't think so.
Take
though.
it from us, I think shitcoiners. You guys just sat around acting like shitcoiners. We are telling you the way it's gonna play out. So have fun.
Well, hey, you know that in Bitcoin's history, there have been a few times where the price has gone sideways and down for multiple years.
All I'm saying is you're going to have a Bitcoin Cash chart for 4 or 5 years if you do it this way. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I'm just telling you that's what you're getting into right now.
I don't think 4 or 5 years. No, I don't think 4 or 5 years.
It will be 100%. I will be buying 99% down, Paul, at the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Like, just watch.
You don't. I don't think 4 to 5 years.
Well, it's going to be multiple. It's not going to
But
be 3 months. It's not going to be 4 weeks. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be a long
Bitcoin,
time.
I've seen Bitcoin crash
And it really
50% in a single day.
Like if people really get mad at you
I've
for taking
seen-
Satoshi's coins or whatever, half of them or whatever, and that becomes a narrative that you don't want to fight against because you guys aren't very good at fighting off of these like behemoth narrative groups, where they're like, oh,
I know, but when the project launches, there will be a whole group of new owners, and they'll have their
exactly
own
the point,
narratives
Paul.
and
So
way to
if
get
you
them
give
out.
20,000 people some coins, you'll have a bigger
Degen,
army.
Here's
You
a
see the
question,
point?
Degen, for you.
But wouldn't I rather have one good
Okay,
person?
I guess you got it figured out. But
Let me
arguably.
ask. So, like, basically, Degen, why do you think these other like proof of stake or any other of these altcoins are not doing the fork the foundation's coins off and then like make their own thing? Because that would seem that's what I always.
we should have been doing that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
but
that
why
would have been a
aren't
better
they?
way to do it this way long term. But I think we got off into token land. We got lost in token land on ETH, and then we came Solana, and then it became 1,000 L2s. So people, all the people in this industry that were onboarded in that phase, they just have a different understanding of the space than people that were onboarded through UTXO chains and back in the era, right? So like, yeah, I agree with you. But again, like I said, the industry has changed. My old understanding of crypto, very much like your guys' is right now, had to be updated to not go crazy, right? Like these things are realities, right? The way that a distribution affects the playing of a chart, the way that the chart actually matters long term, because every single day someone's going to screenshot it and post it on the timeline. Things like they don't seem like they matter in conversation, but in practice they're going to bite you in the ass. So like distribution is the healthiest way to fight against those things. Period. No other stat comes close. Distribution, if there was a stat for it, would be far more important than market cap, than price, than everything.
I think in terms of stability, yes, but I think in terms of volatility, like Paul was talking about, like that is like kind of like the opposite of what happened with Bitcoin and its rise. Like,
Okay. Is it fair to? You're right, JK, and I don't think anybody's necessarily wrong here, and we don't matter. Paul matters. And it seems like.
I'm just curious. You say distribution is the most important thing. What's the perfect distribution? I'm
as
just
wide
curious.
and as long term as possible is the perfect distribution. There's no number for it. It's like security, right? It's the other side of security. Like you can never have perfect security. There's no measurement for security.
Here,
right? Like,
look, putting the coins.
But what does it mean though? You're saying like
the
have
most
it
people
just
possible
start with.
over a period of time continually.
You would say
Okay.
airdrop it to
Not
like 8
necessarily
billion
airdrop
people.
it. Maybe claims, maybe faucets, whatever way you can do it to get as many people in as you can.
Okay, have you?
A faucet? Now I'm giving it away for free. The faucet's a zero price seller.
Well, don't give like an endless.
You're worried about Michael Saylor selling for 10 cents?
It's a penny, and that person's going to be onboarded, and the cost of acquisition has now become a penny for a new user. You see what I'm saying? Like it's just better.
No, at all. The faucet is giving them away for selling them at zero.
A faucet is not going to affect your price. The guy that has 3% that is willing to just clip out is going to affect your price.
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't sound that airtight to me. It doesn't sound very
all
thought
you're doing
out.
is exposing yourself for not trading in altcoins enough. That's all you're doing right now, honestly.
I focus on, I'm obsessed with the fundamentals.
I do too, but
so I know that there's a whole.
both sides. You can't just lean into one side only.
Can I just weigh on it? Like the trade-off here is that, from what Paul has expressed, is that he believes that he's going to airdrop the rich list, and they may dump the tokens. He doesn't really care, but people will have some tokens to play with on the new Drivechain, and that's traded off against the sell pressure, which is going to mount up against the market depth, which albeit will be pretty slim at the beginning. And you are going to have people in the rich list who single-handedly could send the token to zero, just like a pump fund shitcoin. I have problems with that mechanic. He doesn't. But I'm just me.
I think
so.
From this perspective, so this is like, Bitcoin maximalist. Like basically, like I view this, and the whole idea is it is overtaking the Bitcoin culture as being the true Bitcoin culture of building and letting the Michael Saylor take the name. Like, I don't think that
the culture came from fair launches. Like,
no, that's not like from when nobody was in the launch of Bitcoin. Like, it basically was not a launch at all.
But it had its distribution phase where it was worthless for years and years and years, and people were able to get in.
You couldn't.
That's like
you couldn't spin up a node in solo mine.
Yeah, I think you could.
He's
saying it wasn't that widely known.
He's saying in practice though, like very few people knew about it, and so it's kind of debatable. Like it wasn't like, yeah, okay, in one sense, anyone had the opportunity to mine is kind of like saying anyone has the opportunity to like invent eCash or whatever.
Right,
It's like anyone has the opportunity to do whatever they want to do. I'm not sure
Okay,
if
so
it's
if we take passing of time,
I feel bad though that we had one or two people requests, get admitted as a speaker, and then leave.
I think that's
so
just Twitter being dog shit a lot of the time. That happens all day.
yeah. If we could see if someone wants, if Justin wants to say anything, we should rope him in. We can continue to talk about the same topic or whatever. I
sorry.
don't know. Just
Sorry, I came up by
Well,
accident.
what
be friendly
so what
to
software do
all
you
the
guys like particularly find interesting that needs to be added, or like what type of like technical like ads or like things you're following?
way for drive chains to talk to one another, for example. Like, I don't know if you looked at the IBC standard, or like how are the chains going to talk to one another? I'd love to know that from a technological standpoint.
But like why? Like I've also thought about that, but it's at the same point, like what purpose does that pose? Like I've thought like in
Sovereignty.
theory, sovereignty, but why like between? I mean, the whole thing is that drive chain is the communication between them, is you just peg into the main chain.
How does value move from one to the other? How are they linked together? What if you have one?
Yeah.
each of them has like they'll have like an RPC server. I don't know if that's literally what you're asking.
I don't think so.
When they're on the coin, I don't know, JK, do you know
No,
what they're saying?
I mean, I think he's literally just like the idea is that you can move your coins from one chain to the other, and that's how you interact and communicate between the chains. Like, unless there's like some specific mechanism you have for like.
Sure, I could come up with a few. Like, this is something that we've already seen, right, in the Cosmos ecosystem, where you're able to use a standard rather than a just trust me bro bridge between drive chains. I don't know that connected drive chains have the same limitations that you would have for any other type of peg system. Would they not be able to trustlessly speak with each other? Imagine that you had one where you had a borrowing and lending market. On the other one, you had a perpetuals exchange. Obviously, the two of those are interlinked with one another, as borrowing and lending activity is how those contracts are made.
I mean, I think the idea is that you just. Sorry, the idea I think is you just use an HTLC to peg into the other thing using an atomic swap. Like that's kind of the idea of how you talk between chains. I mean, the idea
the committee doesn't want to let, if you borrowed to create a large position on a borrowing and lending market to place it on a perpetuals one after, and there's a federated committee that doesn't want to let you clear your trade, wouldn't that be an issue?
No, none of this has. It's all trustless. Like you can use the pegging mechanism for drive chains to move your coins if nobody else will take your atomic swap.
Dave's calculating. Hold on, give him a second.
I'm not calculating. I wanted to understand how the chains talk with one another. What standards?
I actually, if I could chime in, I actually asked this question to Paul. Quite a few questions related to this on one of the previous spaces where you have an L2, a drive chain on two different layer ones. It's the same drive chain, like BitAssets or BitNames, and they can migrate because they're exactly the same.
Yeah, that because you mean like you want to move your.
Yeah, you could do one migrate. Like you could say you could take a snapshot of BitAssets at a certain time, and then start it up again on a different L1. There are like a couple of different things you could do. They're all very, very different from each other. So it depends totally on what people wanted to achieve, and it might be complicated to follow. But one thing that I'd like to emphasize is that if you just work on the L2 software, which is like basically what Layer 2 Labs does, anyone who uses BIP 300 can just take all of that off the shelf. You know, the BIP 300, 301 activator, the privacy L2, the scaling L2s, BitAssets, etc., prediction markets. You just take all that and plug it in. It's like you have a USB port on your computer, and now you can have a USB hub, and you can plug. And we're like building like the mouse and the webcam and all that stuff. So you could do that. Now with BitAssets, there's all this other information, and BitNames is similar. There's like this other stuff where people have issued like stuff that's like ordinals or NFTs. There's like a long history there. You could like snapshot that, and on one time you could start up an L2 on a different L1 that has the exact same L2 history. It's basically a hard fork BitAssets and onto the different a second different L1. I don't know if anyone would ever want to do an L2 that was on same L2, but on two different L1s simultaneously. I don't think that would ever be great because the L1s might disagree on something and then it would be chaos. So I don't think that would work.
Have you thought, what were the reasons for using the L2 on the sidechain, like, roughly?
Well, for BitAssets, it's kind of like the idea was that it would domesticate. That would be like an L2 for all this stuff about like counterparty, colored coins, ordinals, NFTs, whatever. It would all just be like fit in this like zoo. And so that one in particular, you would wonder about like, can we like move that state around or something? Or it could be more like Tether, where you have USDT on Ethereum or on, Tron or something. So then that would also work, but that'd be a slightly different thing. You'd have one L2 with BitAssets on eCash, then a different L2 BitAssets on something else, some other L1, and they would each issue some, whatever they would call it, USDT, and then they would just live in separate worlds.
Sense. So yeah, I guess like in terms of, that's what I was originally, I guess, wondering about what Dave was saying is just like, I don't think that other coins are really thinking about things in that way either. So I don't know. I was just wondering in general.
Well, if you had like,
what do you think? Okay, sorry, Justin.
If you had like a name coin compatibility or a cross-chain name coin, the idea was, you could bring that across to the other layer 1 chain, and you still have your name coin or what have you.
Yeah, the issue is BitAssets and BitNames, in particular BitNames. BitNames is supposed to be like this other dimension of digital scarcity. So it's like you don't want anyone else to take the Justin name, or like Google.bit or something. You don't want anyone else to have it. So you want to prevent double spending, basically double registering of names. And the set matters, and it's kind of like you want it to be totally up to date. And it's like having like duplication problems in your spreadsheet, or having to do all this data fixing. So that's a case where you only want there to be one state at any given time. And so you would want it to be something where you could like destroy an old version, but port it into new situation.
Would there be a way of using like Truthcoin in order to determine like the true set of domain names? Like, I don't know.
Okay, well, so BitNames and Truthcoin are different, and I think the answer is yes, even though the question is kind of complicated. But I think in the post I wrote a post about BitNames where I explain how we would take on ICANN and win, because that's really hard, but it's something you basically have to do if you're serious about your name project. And it's not really about which one is right, but yeah, you could. It's completely separately from that. You could use. I think prediction markets are really underexplored in terms of like you could have stuff where it's like, okay, if we do this soft fork or not, or if we do this hard fork or not, what would the price be? What would the exchange rate be? So that you have prediction markets on those things. That's like really, really, really helpful. That's what I presented about at Scaling 1 in September of 2015, more than 10 years ago. But still, no one does it. And we sometimes do these fork futures, which are very low quality, or which no one has done. Hopefully, maybe they're a little better now, but they don't even do like, the better fork futures would be conditional, and they would say like, if we did this hard fork. Usually, when people do fork futures now, they say like, okay, what will the BIP 110 coin trade for? And it's kind of unclear exactly what happens if BTC activates BIP 110, or what happens if there is no fork, or what happens. So it's like, so even though I proposed back in 2015 exactly what to do, that would be really, really fun and let people trade, and it would be very helpful for everyone. And of course, we would all do whatever makes the price go up. Goes without saying.
I don't know if there is, like, I suppose this is what Truthcoin is designed to be, but like using it as an oracle for BitNames, in order to resolve something like in a market that says like, oh, is this the correct google.com domain IP address? And if it doesn't resolve to the actual like Google service, you're going to know for sure. Most people are going to say not.
Yeah, you kind of mixed a few things. The Truthcoin can be used for almost anything, but it's very, it works best for high impact decisions that affect lots of people and are controversial and easy to measure at the end. So something like, what does the Fed set? Will the Fed tighten rates, or will we fire the CEO and replace him with someone else, or will we fire the ruling party? Will we fire the Democratic Party or fire the Republican Party and replace them with the Democrat? These are really easy. And then like, what's the GDP? What's the stock price? What is the whatever? How much inflation is there? So those are things that have a huge impact. They're very controversial upfront. They're very easy to measure after the fact. That is where Truthcoin works really, really well. The thing about the Google domains, which the ICANN, or I call the ICANN names like google.com, I have this interesting idea where over time, BitNames will be automatically synchronizing with like the ICANN formatted names, but there will be a separate set of like sovereign names that are not synchronized. And these would be like .bit or like .anarchy or something. And these would be totally ruled by the key. And once you own it on the blockchain, you like own it forever, and it has all these like different properties. And so in that way, BitNames would be like compatible with both. And
is that described in the article?
Some of that.
Okay,
yeah, it is. That's the how to take on ICANN and win part, because you have to give people a property right. People who bought google.com or eCash.com or Bitcoin.com or whatever, people have already like invested in that. That's the system we have, and we can't screw that system up. And it's people. If we do, then all we're going to get is a bunch of angry people who ignore the project. So that would be no good. We have to somehow make sure we protect all the existing property rights to the names while also adding on this feature. And the features are really, really good. Like I think people are actually hungry for a sovereign name situation. For starters, it always gets invented. Like it's being invented on like Ethereum did the Ethereum name system, and even on Bitcoin SV there was like a name cache tag or something. So it keeps getting invented independently. And even with Lightning, it's like it only works if you have it's kind of a long story. I don't want to get into it, but
or Handshake.
Exactly right. So it keeps getting independently invented. A Handshake, and then there was I can't remember. There was like another one that was really big in like 2019.
ENS.
But whatever.
Yeah, that was just ENS, I think.
So
does anybody want to buy slutwife.btc
get out
while
of
I'm
here,
up there?
dude. So do you think that basically you could incentivize like participating in some of those like less designed for Truthcoin type markets by having like a sidechain like subsidize it in some way? Is that like a
Well, for all the markets in Truthcoin, they are designed to accept the subsidy. So they have the automated market maker, and that I think that's crucial because in particular prediction markets have like a kind of a big adverse selection. The prediction market invites people who have more information to trade. So when you trade, you always have to be thinking, hey, do I have like near the most information? Because otherwise I shouldn't trade. It's very bad for liquidity. So these are programmed to benefit from trading activity. It's kind of similar to Pump.Fun to a little extent that I understand Pump.Fun. But it's like you can collect if you make a market that people enjoy trading in. but you have to front the liquidity to create this thing. So
Is that the logarithmic?
about the names. Oh yeah,
No, I
sorry.
was wondering, is that the logarithmic scoring rule or something like that?
It is. Yeah, it's a logarithmic scoring rule. Has many advantageous properties, such as having very high liquidity at the edges, and but also where when you combine multiple events, such as if we fire the CEO, will the stock price go up? People can trade on when people trade on each event independently, they don't get charged extra or less or something. They just get charged the exact same amount as if someone had only made a market on the CEO being fired or only made a market on the corporation stock price. So you can do all kinds of combinations without them interfering. It's just one of its many beneficial properties.
Where's a good place to like look into that in particular? Do you know?
The logarithmic market scoring rule? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one place in the whole internet. No, I'm not sure. But okay, when I learned it, I found one web page, and it wasn't good, but it was because Robin Hansen's. I love Robin Hansen. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. He came up. He invented like a lot of this stuff, and a lot of the stuff I was just like adapting it for blockchain, which was still pretty insightful. But still, Robin Hansen invented all this stuff. He has this paper, a 2002 paper, something like that. It's like ancient, not that ancient. But the point is, long story short, I made this spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel. It's on bitcoinhivemind.com, and you can find it. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the only way anyone has a snowball's chance in hell, because I had to learn it. And I took like so long to even figure out what on earth Robin Hansen was even talking about. And so I made the spreadsheet to learn it myself. And of course, it's very hard to follow a spreadsheet because it's like all code, but there's no comments and stuff. But I worked really hard to add like arrows and explanations and things. So if you download this spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel, it's by far the best way. By far, a million, maybe new stuff is because the spreadsheet's from like 2015 or something. And I update it from time to time. I add a new tab. There's like a million tabs. But I couldn't believe how hard it was to learn. I was like, this is so confusing. And I was like, well, how? And I was like, what is he even talking about? And I was just baffled the whole time. Why is it logarithmic and not spherical? I had like no idea what was going on. And I made my sheet, and so you can check it out in the spreadsheet.
Absolutely. So it's at where's the spreadsheet?
Bitcoin Hive Mind. If you go to truthcoin.info or if you go to truthcoin.com, it will redirect you to truthcoin.info. And then on the right, there's like a sidebar, or if you're on mobile at the bottom, it links to my other sites all linked together. Although I guess I haven't added ecash.com, which I suppose I should get on that. But if bitcoinhivemind.com, that was originally where the prediction market site. Then I renamed and moved a bunch of stuff around, which you should never do. Just PSA to anyone out there who's thinking, you just think really hard about the name once and then never change it. That's my advice to everyone who's listening. Who cares? But if you go to bitcoinhivemind.com, that's like the prediction market project. But then when it became an L2, and when it went back to being a Drivechain L2, it got like renamed Truthcoin DC, Truthcoin Drivechain. So that was my mistake. I learned the hard way. Just commit to the name and never back down.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
No one wants a name to
change.
Do you
think there's going to be like an Oracle Drivechain that's going to be able to connect to like EVM?
Yeah, the Oracle thing is what Truthcoin DC is. It's
so
like
it can connect to everything though. It doesn't have to be UTXO. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Cool.
But again, it only has a limited scope. But it has a limited scope to like the coolest stuff.
Yeah,
so
but
it's
you're
like
familiar with Chainlink,
should we fire the ruling party?
It gives you basics of what Chainlink can do now. Okay,
that's right.
I mean, like people will always be able to iterate on top of that.
When people finally wrap their heads around it, I think they will.
Yeah, because I think that'll be huge. Because I think the number one problem all these proof of work tokens, coins, I guess, have faced over the last couple of years is every time you do this, you're like reliant on exchanges, reliant on bridges, and if you don't play the fraud game in this space, you end up on a little island in the middle of the ocean by yourself, just trading within your small community, and it takes lots of dollars to like fix that problem and build those bridges, right? So like if you had a system like a Drivechain day one, or not day one, but as soon as you could, that was like starting to peg and bring things in from other chains and allow people to wrap stuff. I think that's going to be the thing that like makes you not reliant on like Binance, for example, you know?
Right, I agree.
What would a bridge look like from Ethereum into eCash world?
Well, I'm not that interested in that, but you could have like they have wrapped BTC, you could have like wrapped ETH on, but there's another thing is that I mentioned earlier we had ETH side, which was basically gas, but just as a L2 drive chain, and we made that in 2023, but I kind of lost interest in it because I'm not interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the
In the logarithmic market scoring rule.
yeah, no, but I think
I'm looking.
copy
I'm
of-
looking at the equation. It's just a log transformation to give you probability instead of price. It's not.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. The important
Pretty
thing
simple
is the account balance is the easiest to understand. And then you see why the account balance has to go up as people buy shares and has to go down when people sell shares. And then the prices are like the partial derivative, if you know calculus. So that's why they're so the prices are horrendous. But then you can kind of see how the shares go in, the new account balance comes out, and then it's just subtraction and partial derivative. That's the whole thing actually. So if you could wrap your head around that, then you got it. But it's really hard. It's so weird. It's just
there's
so
this
weird.
liquidity parameter. So
Yeah, that is just that's not that important. That's just this thing that basically scales the whole thing from dimes to dollars, basically.
it's like a K.
So
like a
that's
K
not
in
important.
like traditional AMMs. It's like the B replaced K, basically.
It's kind of and it's not quite like a free parameter, but the idea is you have to pay the initial liquidity when all the shares are zero is B log n. So that's how much you have to sacrifice up front people just asked about that earlier about the subsidy. And so the subsidy goes up when B goes up, but then it's also the market is more liquid. It takes more money to push the price around when B is high. Okay. Yes, DGen.
I'm changing the subjects. I'm raising my hand like a polite adult.
Okay, great.
So if your
That's
goal
fine.
is like users in this kind of subject matter today, then like I guess the question that comes to mind is, are you gonna have? We kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago, but are you gonna have ordinal aware wallets early on? Because that'll bring a bunch of people. If you can also be sort of like, you're giving Bitcoiners Bitcoin, but now you're telling people like, hey, all of your duplicate, ordinal tokens and ordinal assets and meta protocol things can just be ported over here if you want to. Here's a aware wallet so you don't burn all your shit while you're trying to get your coin split. Is that going to be a thing or no? Are you just going to kind of let someone else deal with that?
Well, maybe yes and no. I think if you point the ordinal software, because remember the L1, the eCash L1, it basically is Bitcoin Core. So if you just tweak the ordinal aware software and just point it at eCash, to all the ordinals will show up.
On your end, like the QT wallet would automatically burn ordinals without knowing what they are because they're not on the chain, so the chain doesn't see them.
Yeah, we don't have a QT. I know what you mean, though. The original UI was QT.
Maybe like
approaching
not, but I know what you mean. Or something to integrate would be a way to do it. Like ordinals people use experts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and we could put it in, because like I was trying to say, Bitwindow is supposed to be more of the move fast, break things. It's just supposed to accumulate a bunch of weird stuff. So we could put it in Bitwindow and then it would be fine. The wallet is the BDK wallet, which is like a famous Bitcoin wallet that powers a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they could add a ordinals aware situation. It's just that like if it's like a QT wallet, probably not, right? But if it's like a normal fucking like Edge wallet or something, like those are, they're not going to care. But if you get like an ordinals aware wallet from day one, then you're onboarding people with 0 Bitcoin that have a bunch of art, like they're going to still use the chain, I think, and not have like, I don't know, but it feels just kind of like a waste not worrying about like those people. Because if we think, oh, you're going to get 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 users just from, giving them duplicate Bitcoin, then like you probably get more users from ordinals, because like ordinals are making up 50+% of every transaction right now. even now when it's dead. So it's like, where are the users
Well,
really
yeah,
at?
but I think that it's a low par. I agree with you, but I think it's just because BTC has decided that it doesn't want any users of any kind. We're like currently we're like killing all the users. So we're live. So we're user hostile.
You need a thing called a lifeboat, you know? That'll go.
Exactly. Yes. And so more. The question is like, why does Ethereum have so much higher transaction fees, and why? But a lot of that is like stable coins. But yeah, I think it's bizarre. I think we're hostile to users. We're hostile to innovation. So that's a mistake. And I don't know what will happen if we could just fix that part of the culture where we're not hostile to users. Then who knows how many other things would go right after that. Hopefully, at least a few.
Yeah, I guess like in terms of, I don't know if there are any current chains that have like, I guess, scripting built in intently to like the project, but that's why I was looking at adding like an Elements or like a Simplicity sidechain, like just copying the Blockstream one, and adding UTXO and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I'm actually hoping that people will. Of course, everyone hopes that a bunch of developers will come and make a bunch of stuff. But I think some things that are realistic are someone adds we used to have something that we call Bitcoin Core Plus or Bitcoin Core Extended or something. I don't remember exactly what it was called. But this was like a fork of older version of Bitcoin, but it had like CTV in it and it had like OpCat. And we could bring that back. Or I think that's the type of thing that a bright Bitcoin hack, like someone like Jeremy Rubin, who's like super, super smart, they could make something like that, like by just looking at, the lay of the land. That would be a much better use of their time than campaigning for CTV, which is of course never going to happen just because Bitcoin culture is so screwed up. So instead of completely wasting their time, you would have these people like the BitVM people, all the people who love to hack on Bitcoin script. I would imagine that those people would have like just an L2. Forget L1. They'll say, here's our L2. It's exactly the same as this L2 is exactly the same as Bitcoin Core, but it has OpCat and it has OpCTV and it has this long list of other stuff.
Or JK or
from
whoever else. Have you guys heard of Alkanes yet? Have you seen that thing? It's like on Ordinals side.
what's it called?
Alkanes.
I have not.
ALKANES. Basically, it's WebAssembly code stored on an indexer, and then the DeFi side of it is like if they're trying to be as L1 as they can on Bitcoin, all things considered. So they still have to use the indexer. They still have to use it's sort of like an indexer side chain, but it's not even a chain. It's just like a fucking indexer, right? But basically, like it's WebAssembly code where you have approved like basically cloned versions of ETH contracts, but you can approve how the WebAssembly code is allowed to be used. And so maybe something like that could be a more on-chain, because it seems to be working. We have on-chain LPs on Bitcoin now. I mean, on-chain as much as an indexer is involved is, but like it's pretty close to I think where it can get on Bitcoin side. So if you put something like that onto a more scalable thing like a Drivechain or even just the L1 of I think something like that would be.
I assume that's using like Citria or something like that.
No, I don't think so, actually. I think they just have built their whole stack from the bottom up, like everything, indexer, software, all of it. Like they don't rely on anybody else's shit except for the stuff they built. Subfrost is the company. They have a thing called Rebar, which is like how to manage the pools and like backend and stuff. I don't know, it's everything. Like I would look into it if you're going down that route of how do we do smart contracts better on L1,
Okay, let's. Marcus has been brought up as a speaker, so hello, welcome.
Yeah. Pretty late here, but one thing I was thinking is you mentioned stablecoins, right? But from what I know about Thunder, it will only use eCash, right? It cannot support other assets, and you have BitAssets for that. But then, wouldn't it be better for the Thunder, other chains to be multi-asset so they can support those kinds of? Because we know a large part of fee revenue today on other chains comes from altcoins, right? stablecoins. I mean,
Yeah, so I've gotten this question before, and it's a very good question. And the answer that I give, which I believe, is that I don't know if the best thing is for there to be topic-specific chains, and this would be like a BitAssets chain, a BitNames chain, etc. I don't know if that's the best lay of the land, like a privacy chain, or if instead it will be more like, here is the small blockchain, like here's the Ethereum, here's the Solana, here's like the base or something like that. So I don't know if, but I think a clue as to where the sidechains will appear is like where there's large disagreements among people. So like some people wanted small blocks, some people wanted large blocks. So probably that would be like a stable split. And then some people really want privacy by default, privacy layer 1, whatever, other people don't. And there was even a Zcash bug like today or yesterday or something, which highlights the trade-off for that. So I don't know how it will be chopped up. And it's completely possible that the Thunder chain or just the large blockchain, that one will do a lot of stuff, like extra stuff like assets and privacy. So my answer is that I don't know how it will be chopped up. But doing the sidechains by topic does have a lot of advantages for like how hard the machine has to work. And like you can have like, the node, it can have like some kind of state. Like it can very easily list all the assets and make special stuff where you want to auction an asset or something. So I don't know how it will all fall out. And a third possibility is that at the end of the day, there will just be like a kind of liberal chain and like a conservative. I guess this is kind of like the Ethereum Solana split. Whereas people keep pushing the envelope and they'll say, okay, here's an even weirder L2. And then that's not weird enough. Here's yet another even more strange. So it's a good question. It's particularly like, will the assets, are they better done just like on Thunder as a kind of like counterparty on Thunder, or like whatever, colored coins on Thunder, that type of thing? Or should they be in their own chain? I don't know. But we have both options. But it's a good question. I honestly, and I'm not even sure how we would know. The only thing I got for you is this rule of thumb about when lots of people disagree, probably that is a stable split, a partition, into the different L2s. But I have no idea. Yeah, it could shake out anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I myself I think you saw it on Telegram, right? I was thinking about making elements, the thing Liquid uses, a Drivechain, and maybe deploy it if that's possible. I don't know. But then that was the thing I was thinking, because like let's keep the topic of stablecoins. In stablecoins, there's a lot of different use cases that they're used for. So for one, they're used for payments, but they're also used for smart contracts, DeFi kind of stuff. So like it would be interesting if you want this liquidity to be shared and all that, right? But also Thunder is made for payments, right? So that's why I think it would make sense to have a Thunder that supports that. I'm basically rambling here because I know this is huge demand, right? So, and what we want is fees, especially in the beginning, so the chain doesn't die off, right? So it is secure. And I think one of the ways we could get a lot of fees is from stablecoin activity, be it stablecoin payments or stablecoin DeFi. So I don't know. That's funny.
Yeah, I agree. Stablecoins are great, and most of the stablecoin activity is on Ethereum and Tron and not on BTC, even though this was originally a BTC project. So it perfectly fits the idea that everyone in BTC is over here inventing all this useful stuff, and then we just hand it over to these other people in Ethereum, and then we say in the BTC community, say, oh, we never wanted that anyway.
I think those are just the Mossad agents, Paul, for real. Let's be real. Come on. Yeah. Everybody wants Bitcoin to be better if they care about Bitcoin. Only the people that are brain dead think that Bitcoin's software. Oh, yeah, that's the perfect software, and it's never going to need any adjustments because it's just the perfect software, bro. Like,
well,
those people
once
are
it
not
had
real.
Drivechains, that's kind of true, but the I guess I looked up that one project you were talking about, and it's just like a large federation the way they're doing it. But anyway, if you are serious,
sense,
Marcus, though, about doing the liquid thing, I'm also kind of working on that, adding elements.
Oh, sure, we can
Yeah,
work
I think
together
that's
then.
good.
Let's talk then.
Yeah, you guys should. The element stuff, like, okay, I remember it has like tree signatures.
Yeah. Elements has a bunch of stuff actually. It does have confidential transactions. It has assets. It has opcat and I think it has some introspection stuff, other covenant stuff. They have a bunch of cool stuff, and
I
it's
think you're trying to say CTV.
yeah. I'm not sure that they have CTV, but I know they have opcat.
My guess is that they don't. I have no idea at all, but my guess is because, they have a little bit of a not invented here syndrome. So I guess they don't have it.
Yeah.
But maybe they have something else. Maybe they have, you could probably add it. I think there would definitely be a huge market for like a Bitcoin Core Plus.
Yeah.
And I think if you
think
did,
Elements is a great fit for that, Exactly, because
you guys would be very popular because all these other people who are doing like OpCat stuff and Jeremy Rubin or whatever, they would all be like, oh, like this is like at least, because like Bitcoin Inquisition is one thing, but then it would be like, oh, there's this actual project that is like very like in the Bitcoin vein, and then we could actually just launch it over here, and it's kind of like,
yeah,
you could at least do something. So I think there's a lot of people who have like backed up ideas. Like there's a lot of like Bitcoin project people hacking on Bitcoin script and stuff. They would just think, well, this is the only game in town. And they may even, they might have other thoughts too. They might think like, well, my options are launch my own altcoin, which I don't want to do. Or they might think, well, what are we going to do with this project? We're going to take it to like Ethereum. So they think, no. So actually, I think this is a pretty attractive opportunity. You guys would probably become popular, and I don't know what your chances are with, OpenSats grants and other stuff like that.
Well, that was the other thing I wanted to bring up earlier is like, you're in competition with companies like Binance who are giving 30% of gas fees to devs and shit like that. Like, do you have anything in mind that's going to keep you competitive? Because right now you're going to have a really hard time finding people to care dev wise, even if it's cool, it's just the money side of
No,
things.
I'm not worried about that at all. It's a good question. I've answered an FAQ on the eCash.com. What developers really want is the freedom to build what they want to create, and that's what they want more than anything else. Of course, obviously they like money, but you can look at, for example, the example of Satoshi, who just, we worked for free and released this project. But you can look at like Jeremy Rubin and all these other people. They work for years and years to months. They put months and years perfecting it. It's a creative act. It's like Beethoven writing his Ninth Symphony or his other symphonies, which are also good. But it's like, it's a creative act, and you have to wait until it's finished, until you know if what you've got is any good. And then they want to be able to turn it on. And that's not the same thing as saying that developers don't need any money because they're like monks. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that's what really motivates them. And I'm also saying that since it's all open source, we want to be able to just take anything that's really good, we can just take. I hate to steal, and I don't mean to disrespect anyone's, I think intellectual property is real. Like, it's sad when you see like a real comedian who steals jokes. Like, I think that's awful. That is I don't know if it's a crime or how it should work, but that is terrible. And they have their own culture to like enforce that, about like if someone is a known joke thief. You can look this up on YouTube. It's interesting. So I don't want to but at the same time, the Zcash people made the Orchard crate. That's what we used in Zside. I think that's what the bug was in. So we'll have to look into that. And, it doesn't have to be like, there are plenty of things people can do. I could go into more detail about like developers add like a hidden little backdoor that then they remove later when they get, bought out or whatever it is. So you got to have property rights are important. But the idea with the development is like, we don't need to like hire a huge team of people to create something new. It's either take what works, or
I get it.
me
agree,
and
but
Player
you gotta
2 Labs
remember,
building it. We're building
you're up against people like CZ, and I'm gonna tell you from experience what's gonna happen. All right, if you become successful, big if, by the way, I'm sorry to say, respect you and everything, but big if, You know who's going to come and hijack every single fucking thing you've done with more money behind it and take over, and all of a sudden it's their idea, it's their project now? Binance is going to do that to you. So if you succeed, that's not necessarily the whole battle. You know, like, you're going to need to defend for 20 years your ecosystem from vampiring, and vampiring is 80% of this fucking ecosystem these days. People will look at your code, rewrite it, say they wrote it from scratch. They will copy your exact ideas, rename them. They will literally do everything they can to vampire any success factor you have once you get up there. Look at Bitcoin Cash community and the stuff they face. It's going to be the very same systems coming at you.
That's sort of what you're trying to avoid with the fork, is like when you're adding those same people.
Yeah, I get that. That's true, but it's still going to be there though.
Right.
Like CZ is still going to want to take your shit, you know.
Yeah. It's tough out there, but you have to keep in mind that what is my goal actually? Like, I was trying the whole time to give BIP 300 away for free to the BTC community. So if they then if people copy it and they say, aha, I'm going to show him, I'm going to deploy my huge resources and reach into taking this idea. And so, well, that was what actually I wanted the whole time.
But that's you as the idea guy. Now you're a founder. Now you're the guy. Now everyone's relying on you. They're going to come sue you. They're going to be angry at you, Paul, if you fucking don't make us billionaires. You know what I'm saying?
People have been angry at me in one way or another before, and it hasn't bothered me as much as you might think. But of course, I prefer to make everyone happy. I'm not worried about development. I'm not worried about people stealing. I actually know I have a little bit of experience myself. I could tell you from experience, once large amounts of money get involved, productivity falls 99%, sometimes becomes negative, where the more people involved, the more chaos is produced. And I think I know a little bit about how open source software is run successfully, actually. So I'm not that worried about that. And even the outcome you painted, that's one that I want to bring about anyway. So that's part of what I want.
Hell yeah.
So I would kind of enjoy that. And I think that would be fun.
Shout out Mark's Garage down below. Time chain pages. Paul, please don't let @decentralized on your stage. He is a scene whore. Shout out Mark.
That's very sound advice. Paul, like, is the overarching goal then, like, for you to change Bitcoin more so than this project be successful? Like, is that really what you would like to get out of this?
It's a successful world. I'm more worried about the world than I am about eCash or BTC. So that's what I'm worried about.
Okay, but you're not a very good founder. I'm already going to put in a vote to replace you with like a Michael Saylor type, because I need my bags. I'm going to mine this shit. I'm going to buy this shit, Paul. And if this shit goes down 80% and your excuse is, well, Bitcoin added BIP 300, we won, I'm going to look at you cockeyed, for 10 years, cockeyed.
No, I already thought of that. And I explained to the investors, and they have a deal where I thought of that already. So I understand that you appreciate the complexity of the situation, but I got lots of special schemes for that. I planned this all out like a long time ago, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. So you just worry about yourself. And if you want to hold a vote of no confidence. So again, Layer 2 Labs just produces this software, the L2 software, which can be used by any BIP 300 L1.
Oh,
so that's what Layer 2 Labs does.
If someone else, let's say Bitcoin Cash integrates BIP 300, right, does that give them the ability to do better atomic swaps between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash or no? Oh,
yes.
Interesting. Okay, good to know.
They can also just take the Z side, privacy L2 and the prediction markets L2 with the logarithmic scoring rules and all the other BitNames and BitAssets. They could just take all that stuff.
So is BIP 300 the best way to forward the concept of atomic swaps? Like, because we don't, like, I thought that's what I thought in 2017, 2018. I thought we were going to get all these cool UTXO based atomic swap systems. And what was that wallet back then? I think not Box Wallet, but something like some simple wallet was like, it was just a DEX before there was DEXs of UTXO
the
chains.
Atomic swaps is this thing CoinShift,
okay,
which I think is okay. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I don't think I've seen that. I have to look, but yeah, stuff like that I think is where this really shines. Like if we can stop using exchanges as much because of some upgrade to UTXO model.
Yeah, this is a CoinShift. You should check out
Okay.
CoinShift. But I think it can replace exchanges. But I think the idea is that as long as you have like a good enough fallback where, like you don't need the exchange anymore, then the exchange is kind of like, extra on top,
Makes sense.
So then it kind of reduces their negotiating
100%.
leverage.
And that's the problem. Like the
Essentially.
reason like you guys are all bullish on stablecoins is just because we're so reliant on these centralized entities, I think, right? Like there should be more reliance on pegging things versus Bitcoin and Bitcoin going, but we've gotten away from that because we started relying on centralized entities, which relied on other centralized entities, which, like the pressure just goes from the banks all the way down to the exchanges. And then we get a ecosystem that doesn't look like what it was supposed to be because of those incentive structures. And like atomic swaps undermine that entire structure incentive wise and let us just peer-to-peer do shit again.
Yeah, that allows you to swap things or not move them amongst chains. That was something I was asking JK earlier about this peg thing, and he explained to me that there's absolutely no risk or a need for a standard like IBC. Can you help me better understand that? Like how you're able to peg out risklessly? Isn't there supposed to be a mining vote or something like that happens?
You're talking about Bit 300. The coins move where there's no people involved. It's what Bit 300 does, is it deposits and the withdrawals. Now there is the L1 full node is not looking at what happens with the withdrawal, so you don't see what happens there. So it can be, but the idea is this: all the L2s are merge mined. So from the miner's point of view, these are just like factories that just print money. These are magic money tree. The money is just like coming off of them for free, passively, doing nothing. So the idea is that miners, they automatically process the deposits and the withdrawals correctly. Now, if the miners intervene, last sentence. If the miners intervene, they can screw up the withdrawals. But the idea is, why would they do that? Because these are just things that just print money for them.
Yeah.
So it depends on how much transaction fees. So there's some math on this in the original November 2015 post. And then since, like I've done, you do a little napkin math and see, well, what kind of fees are we looking at in the real world, and how many coins would be on the chain, and how many, how bad could the withdrawals get, et cetera. And yeah, it comes out like pretty well, I think, where it's like the amount of money they earn greatly outstrips the amount of money they could miss withdrawal. So then it just seems like it would work to me. Now, there's no guarantee that it will work. It could fail just like anything else. I think actually a lot of stuff that people think works today, such as Bitcoin Lightning Network, et cetera, I think a lot of this stuff basically has already failed. So there's a lot of stuff today that people put a lot of time and energy in that I think is substantially worse than this idea. So you should just check it out for yourself and see what you think of these numbers and the logic of the whole thing. But yeah, that's the idea, that the miners vote, but kind of if they just leave it on autopilot, it will work. They have to manually screw everything up in order to screw up the withdrawals. The deposits always work because of the way the L2s work. Deposits will always work perfectly.
The withdrawal is a calculation. If they're able to steal $1 billion and sacrifice $1 million per month, then opportunistically they may do so. But in the case where they're invested in the success of the Drivechain, you'd expect them to act economically rational. Why in design? Why
is that also?
Why go that way rather than a cryptographic proof?
Well, actually, I think the cryptographic proof doesn't add very much, because the cryptographic proof, if you think about it like this, let's say that instead of thinking about it in terms of this could never ever break versus something that could break, if you frame it that way, then obviously the cryptographic way looks better. But what if you framed it a different way? Let's just say you frame it, there's two methods. One, the 51% hash rate actually hates. They don't like it at all. And they don't like it, they hate it. Of course, in the middle, they could be indifferent, but then there's another one that they really love it. They love that it's there. Okay, so in this conception, the one where they love it, everything's fine because it will work. And then where they hate it, actually the cryptographic one is kind of also doomed, because the miners could maybe miners can always censor the deposits or the withdrawals. And they can, in the case of the Lightning Network, they can do all kinds of other interference. It's much easier for 51% hash rate to steal from the Lightning Network, from a Lightning channel, than it is from the L2 drive chain.
Yeah, I think I'd better understand the
Actually.
payoff matrix, like having one where, yeah, the economic rationale there could make more sense in the actual operation.
Some other stuff, like, okay, as soon as there's a bug in the cryptographic one, well, someone's going to exploit it and take all the coins. But actually, what if there's a bug in something that everyone is enthusiastic about it working as
rely
is?
on the human
then
malware
cooperate.
instead. Like the human malwares that we're
everyone will
we're probably going to act in our own self-interest.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to think, well, wait a minute, I noticed this bug, and then they'll all just kind of fix it quietly. They won't want to exploit it. You know what I mean? It's like you just think, so that's better, actually. I think that's almost better. Not necessarily, but it also happens to be way simpler. Like BIP300 is just this counter that counts to like 13,000 over and over. So it's not really that complicated. And whereas these other things are like the ZK, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, and we just saw there's an Orchard, there's a inflation bug in Zcash. So,
we've seen like countless quote unquote safe bridges, whether it's like a multi-sig or some other tech, lose hundreds of millions of dollars. So I don't disagree with you there.
Completely agree. Yeah, I'd rather bet on something that's a little more transparent, that people can kind of figure out, okay, this is how it's supposed to work and why. And so I actually think that's a little bit better. I would prefer something where it could never break, and et cetera, et cetera. But I actually think this is perfectly fine set of trade-offs, especially because in a world, you can imagine a world where the cryptographic thing doesn't pay. Like, imagine you have a cryptographic thing that works perfectly. No one can ever steal from it or interfere with it in any way. And it doesn't charge transaction fees versus merge-mined L2 drive chain. Well, in the merge-mined L2 drive chain, the miners are getting lots and lots and lots of free money that they wouldn't have gotten before. And whereas the cryptographic thing, they aren't getting any money. So, it's kind of like maybe that's actually worse because, and even if such a thing like can't really exist because you need transaction fees to stop people from flood. Because of course the transaction fee is also like the cost of DDoSing and flooding the network. So it can't literally be zero. But I'm just trying to paint as an example here. If you had the miners would want to maybe attack and destroy the cryptographic, where they would say, well, you're not allowed to use this one because we prefer you to use the one that pays us the transaction fee. That's kind of an extreme case, but that actually is the case that, like, for example, the Lightning Network would be in the long run if it actually worked. Lightning doesn't really work, so it doesn't matter. But like if you made it to 8 billion users, then there'd be all these people transacting on the Lightning Network. The LSPs would be collecting hundreds of billions of dollars in transaction fee revenues per year, and the miners would not. But the miners would be thinking, hey, we are the ones that make the channels. We make the blocks, the L1 blocks and the L1 channels that make all this possible.
Yeah, like in the opportunistic, like in the optimistic case, greed reinforces one while it destroys the other. And in the less optimistic case, it's a low value drive chain and it probably doesn't matter.
That's exactly right. So I also think, like, if people aren't paying transaction fees to use it, and if it's not like contributing to the Bitcoin exchange rate, well, then maybe it just shouldn't exist at all. Like maybe that's a clue that no one should be, the developers, the users, the miners, no one should really be paying very much attention to this. So I took it as a kind of assumption that people would be using it for transaction fees and that the miners would be happy to have it around. And so I kind of built it around those assumptions. And then once you do that, this is like the cheapest, easiest, most efficient, like kind of like easiest to follow. Like this is like a very, very healthy design. And then if those aren't true, then it's not
the garbage removal is kind of like just an added byproduct, I guess. Like, okay, what about?
Right, I prefer it get deleted.
What about?
Exactly.
Okay, what about like more advanced things that we see on some other chains? Like, how would they can talk to each other in this way where risk is minimized, as you explained. What about things like composability? Doing something on one drive chain to affect accounts on another drive chain, for example.
Well, you could have such a thing, and what it would probably be is you'd have L1, then you'd have a bunch of L2s like ABC, then you probably make yet another thing. This is like what CoinShift is. CoinShift takes like, it says, this is an L2 with like several different L1s that it is aware of. Not that it is like merge mined with or something, but it's like you could also do this where you have another L2, like an L3 or something, that's like aware of like a whole family of different L2s and L1s. And as long as you, this is tricky to do, but it is possible, and that's what CoinShift is an example of that. So you make like a new thing that's like kind of, it just covers them all at the same time, and then it knows about any, as soon as something happens in one of those networks, it knows about it, and it can like, have one giant,
and they're
SQL,
necessarily like
join or whatever.
They're all synced, right? You don't have an async situation between drive chains, or do I not understand that bit correctly?
Well, I think every blockchain could be reorged, so I don't know the extent to which I would describe it either way, right? Because they are becoming finalized over time. So I'm not sure if I would explain it that way, but it's possible. Yeah, I mean, one thing is that like, think about like something like Edge Wallet or Cake Wallet. Like that's a piece of software that it's aware of many, many, many blockchains. So that you can see that that's possible. Or Jax, they used to have that. These multi-coin wallets. So you could build something like that, and then you could build something that also is a blockchain. Okay, this has been really, really great. It's supposed to be from 2 to 4. Now it's 2 to 4:50. So I think we should end it here, even though it was really fun. Oh, wait, we got one person. We got an OG Vega. Maybe we can, or maybe they can come next week, because we do them every week. And I don't know if they could join in time, but probably not. Okay, but this will be posted. The recording will be on YouTube. We're starting up our YouTube channel. It's going to put some cool stuff on there. And all the recordings will be on YouTube, and we can do this every Wednesday. And maybe we'll do it on a different day if someone really, really, really wants to join. They can't join on Wednesday for some reason. We'll move it around. But this was really good. Thanks to everyone who participated and asked a question or comment. So thanks very much. And I'm going to end it here. Thanks. Watch the recordings on YouTube or other places. So thanks a lot, everyone. See you guys next week. Thanks.
Thank you.